Hey, what's up, Skyball? I'm here with Imagination Creation Films, and today, well, it's Friday. I don't exactly know what date it is. I do now. It's the 29th of July, 2022, and you know what that means? That's right. It's a live stream day, and it's a different live stream day today. It's a live stream day at a different location, and we have different people. We have 3 guests on the live stream today, and we will bring them in one at a time, and sometimes 2 at a time. Just depends on how I feel. The first one we're going to bring in is Chris Fields from Biolapse, and he's rather small. Let's fix that. There you are. Say
Hey,
hello to
Scott.
everyone, Chris. Introduce yourself.
Hey. All right. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Chris Field. Spent a lot of time dealing with motion control for time-lapse projects and things like that. And, hey, thank you very much for having me on. It's a real pleasure to be here.
You've been I've been watching you for a long time just by all the little things that you do. I'm like, I want to do that. I want to learn that. I want to figure that one out. Let's bring in our next 2 guests. We'll bring them at the same time if I figure out how to properly size them. We'll do no. There we go. And we have with us Eric Kessler and Jason Cross. Eric,
hello, everybody.
Introduce yourself in case you might.
I'm Eric Kessler, and I run Kessler Crane, and this is Jason, our top sales guru over here that sales and support. Definitely a lot of our customers probably have dealt with him over the last several years that he's been with us, and we're happy to be here. Yeah.
So the forum here is pretty simple. Audio is really bad. Tim, tell me what's going on. Tons and tons of static all around on all channels? Really? Sounds fuzzy. Okay, let me... Oh, this is how we just got on the live stream. We like to just take it to the next level. Does that help? Is that a lot better right there? Let me know if that does wonderful things. Does that make life good? It's good to take about 30 seconds around trips. While that is, I'll speak fuzzily. It's an informal chat here. We've got Chris that will be diving into seeing all the cool things that he does. And if anybody has questions about what Chris does, what I do, what Eric or Jason or Kessler or motion control or anything in the bud, feel free to ask him. Maybe we can sort this as well. Okay, we can do that. Sounds like you're on the news. You can get us down here on this thing. That's right. All right, I'm muting first.
Hello. How's that? Can you guys hear me?
Okay, my mic back on. Yeah, let me know what you hear. This is great. Isn't it? Sounds like the magic of the affecting everything that was wrong. Okay. Let me just check. Audio. Test. It's fuzzy.
Hey, do I sound okay to you guys over in...
Yeah, you sound good to us.
Okay.
You want me to jump on your computer?
I'd just like to say that it was mentioned that I sound perfect. I'm ready for my record contract.
It's something in the... Let's see. That's headphones. Let's go. Sorry, everyone. This is... It sounds good through the headphones here. Test, test, test. Yeah, wait.
Yeah, that sounds a lot better over here.
Oh, we got it now. You're kidding. That's it?
What was it?
What in the world? Talk, Jason.
We good?
I think we're good. Oddly enough, I'm gonna turn up my volume here a little bit here. The headphones were causing it to do that. I've never seen that before. There is a little bit of an echo. Yeah. Okay. All right. So there we go. Okay. All right. Let's. Hey, everyone, back to one, please. Back to one. And okay, there we go. There's. Okay, we'll turn that off. We don't need that echo. All right. So kill that one off. Everyone, give me a thumbs up. Nope, Scott. Wait. Was better right before that? Is it back? Oh my God.
I don't hear anything. It sounds fine.
Okay. Almost like he moved into a different microphone. Okay, this is weird.
Is it back?
I mean, it sounds pretty good from here. It's echoey. I mean, you're going to hear the echo. I mean, it sounds pretty good from here.
Sounds good on my end.
Yeah. Okay. We're gonna roll with this for a little bit. We'll see what happens. Okay. Back to reality. Okay, it's good now. Everybody says, okay, there we go.
Everybody's happy.
Everybody's big thumbs up. Great success. All righty then. So, oh, hey, Chris. How's it going?
Scott, how you doing?
So, how did you get started in, well, your career, really, and then we can dive into motion control there later.
Basically, it was a hobby that I just took too far. Quite some time ago, I saw, I think a lot of time-lapse photographers will see something similar where there was that Timescapes video, and you see all these stars moving behind the trees and, the landscapes and the clouds, and I just kind of fell in love with it and wanted to learn how to do it. But around that time, I was going through a divorce, and I had literally no money. So in order to do it, I had to just start learning how to build the stuff myself because I couldn't afford any of the equipment. I could afford like a $20 Adreno, and a stepper motor and a couple belts, but not a full system. And I just kind of fell in love with the process of building things. And we started, I was working with a friend, Kyle, at the time, and the company's name was the Kronos Project, and we started selling these time-lapse rails all over the world, but it didn't make enough money for us. It was way too time-intensive, and we just kind of got burned out and let it go. And then after that, I just kind of turned all that energy and everything in towards my own projects. And one of the things I started to do was film some plants in my basement. And then, as time goes on, I'm no longer in the divorce and money starts freeing up. And I've already learned a little bit of how to build things. So I just kept building upon until eventually, here I am. My work started getting noticed. I started getting pulled into various projects for different documentaries. And, here I am.
That's awesome. I do see that you are running a good game behind you, trying to outdo the number of motion control.
You got us beat.
Yeah, I tell you, this isn't all I have either.
Yeah, I know.
I've seen pictures of the little studio there. There's stuff everywhere. And for everyone watching, we have.
The static's back.
Is it?
Oh, no.
How about now? Is it?
Nope. There.
That's weird.
I think.
In there?
It tends to flare up as you talk.
Oh, wow. Okay. My doctor said if that happens, then
You just got to stop talking.
I'm just going to turn myself down then.
Yeah.
We'll do it that way.
It's gone.
Okay. It's gone. Interesting. What a weirdness I've not encountered before. So we have, We could talk personally just to me, or if you just want to talk to these two, and no one else can, we can't hear. And then, if you're interested in anything that's going on back behind, I mean, anybody can get up and go back there, except for Chris. He cannot get up and go back there. We tried, but there was too much static. So. Let's see here. Let's. Lots of echoes. You go. Sounds like wireless static. Really? It's weird because I don't hear at all the static. I don't know.
This says low battery on it. Is that?
Oh no, it's just on.
Oh, okay.
It's the Sennheisers are weird. It sounds good.
Chris, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you sound good.
Well, we'll fix that.
All right. We all just stay over.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Run the show.
Sorry about the echo. I don't think there's anything we can do about that because we're all sitting so close to each other in a big room that has got lots of echo. So, I mean, there's 3 microphones picking up lots of different reverberations. It's going to be good. I mean, anybody have any questions right off the bat, just feel free to ask them down below. Chris, do you have like some examples of cool stuff that you've shot and done or that you want to talk about? Or
Yeah, I think one of the things that I had done that seemed to get some attention was, I mean, first off, just filming plants. Not a lot of people do it. It's kind of like trying to film puppies and children. They don't really behave. The problem is they tend to sneak out of where you expect they're going to go when you're not there paying attention. I can't sit there and monitor my shoots 24 hours a day to make these little adjustments. So I rely on systems where I can actually adapt the camera path to move with the subject. Right now, a lot of my footage is still wrapped up in documentary series that have yet to be released, but I do have something that kind of shows that if you'd like to kind of get an idea. Let me see.
Present yourself now.
Okay, let me find it real quick. Okay, there it is. This is actually older footage, but it's one that actually it kind of turned the BBC on to what I was doing and got me onto the Green Planet. Do share screen.
I mean, come on, guys. This is a completely different Balcom live stream. I mean, we're not having internet problems. We're just having audio problems.
Okay, I got that sharing. So let's see. I'm going to go ahead and back that up a little bit.
Sure.
And you'll see that, I start out, that's almost video right there, shooting really fast. But as it starts to go in, I start seeing some movement. And then what I wanted to do is see where exactly this tip was going to end up. And they're really hard to predict. You can see here, I'm just kind of pulling the camera back up. And these are all adjustments that I'm making on the fly while I'm filming it. And I think this was about 40 days worth of capture to catch this. And this was done on my Robot Auto, which is, I think, a 7-axis gantry rig that hangs down from the ceiling.
That's a really neat shot.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kept building the set behind it as this thing was filming.
As you were determining where you were going to go, you're like, oh, gotta film it, gotta film it.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean,
Yeah, so those are kind of techniques that really increase the chance of this stuff kind of working, because like I said, if you're going to be filming this, it might just it might just set it right out of the focus zone. And most of the time when you're dealing with motion equipment, they're meant to capture things a little bit faster, and you write out the entire program, the entire script, so you do all the keyframing and everything that you need, and then you just let it run. So this was something that DragonFrame was able to give me the ability to do, was to stop the system, move my camera out to where it's going to be in about 3 seconds worth of footage time, and then see, does that look like where it's going to go? And if it is, cool. But if it's not, it looks like it's sliding out, I can make these little tweaks and continue to focus and move the thing around and build the script as it films.
How often are you adjusting? Or how often are you looking at it, checking progress?
Ooh, really bad static there, but let me try to answer. Generally, I'll go out to my studio every day and kind of see where things are going and kind of gauge, the path of where they have been to where they're going. So I'm able to film it and review the footage all the way up to the very last frame that was taken and play it back instantly. and then that kind of gives me an idea where the plant's moving. And sometimes, depending on the subject, I won't have to really move at all, like cactus flowers and things like that, or just flowers in general. Um, they're relatively predictable. You kind of have to clamp them down a little bit. But there's a lot of other plants. Like there's one I filmed for Green Planet. It's Utricularia. It's a type of carnivorous plant that lives in a bromeliad. And the bromeliads is, I'm sure a lot of people have seen them. They're these plants that they almost look like they form a cup in the center, really big, thick leaves that will branch out. And that cup will hold water in it. And the utricularia will climb into one of those cups, and it'll start to reproduce itself, and it'll eat everything out of there, all the bugs and larvae and stuff like that. And then it'll reach out a tendril, which is called a stolon, and it'll move on to the next plant and then go down into it and recreate itself again. So it'll actually hop from plant to plant.
Crazy.
So those are pretty fun to try and watch. Something like that, you're watching it, you're checking on it, like, throughout the day, and just looking to see if it's staying in focus, if it's staying in the right location. But once you start getting the hang of it, you have to make less adjustments. That's for sure. I can't hear a thing. I'm sorry, Scott, but I cannot hear anything.
Chris, how long have you been shooting plants?
I think I started shooting plants back in 2015. Maybe 2014 is when I first started. So, closing in on 8 years, I think.
Cool. Did you know anything about prior to starting? Something you educated yourself on since this is where your business work has moved you into.
Boy, guys, I'm really sorry. I can't hear. So, Scott, what I'm hearing is severe echo, severe distortion, and static all laid in, and that echo repeats itself, kind of at that speed.
Is it these speakers?
Looking at some of the questions on here, though, so like Pete, you'd ask, why not just shoot wide and crop down later? You definitely can, but the thing is, I prefer to try to get up there as much as possible, and even then, the plant can still grow out of place of where you want it to be. So sometimes I actually will do that, and what I will do is if I'm making a movement, an adjustment that's a little bit aggressive, I'll actually kind of smooth that out in post, because most of the time I'm filming with 24 megapixel frames. So I got 6,000 across and 4,000 down, and I'm looking for a 4K chunk out of that. So that does give me a little bit of room to do that kind. But one thing I really like to be able to do is get really close to the plant, get that real narrow isolation with that thin depth of field, and just get really, really close to it. And then when I use that post-crop capability, I can even expand it more to show more detail of the plant in the really fine, small portions. It definitely is a method, though, that you can just pull it out wider, but I tend to try to keep it as close as possible to what I want to see in the result as what I'm seeing in the frame, if that helps. Eric Werner asks, I know 5-axis systems, XYZ focus, what is your axis 6 and 7? So on Auto, that was the first robot I built, and what I had is X, Y, and Z for the gantry system, and then there was pan and tilt, of course, and then there was focus, which brings you up to 6. And then what it also had was it has roll, so that's 7 in order to roll the camera, but that's not something I use very often. And then 8, and the last one they had is a little mini slider about this long that I can use to reposition the camera to get left eye and right eye shots if I want to film in 3D. Otherwise, I can also rotate the entire system 90 degrees, aim the camera down that little slider, and turn that into a macro slider. So I can either do focus racks and focus stacking by adjusting the focus, or by pulling the camera itself forwards and backwards. Just kind of depending on the lens and the subject, kind of dictates which is going to be a better method to use for that. But that, so I believe it was that 7, 8. And I always try to build all my driver boxes out so they all have the capability of doing 8-axis. So in case I want to animate a prop, or if I want to animate a light, I can have a light actually arc across the set in order to give that kind of a hourly feel with the sun if I want to introduce that in there.
My audio is probably total hot garbage.
Let's see, Chris Brost. I'm sorry, I hope I'm saying that correctly. It says, can you go deeper into changing keyframes on the fly? Is this with DF Moco? Yeah, so on cases like this, I do use Dragon Frame in my studio to control my large robots. And on there, you have the ability to go ahead and write out the script that you want. It's very similar in appearance to what you would see on Chaos from Kessler, where you have all the different graphs or axis on there, and you can set all the keyframes and position the camera wherever you want. You can come up with a very complex move quite easily. Well, not easily. It's always a risk, but I mean, you can do something really interesting like sweeping the camera down through a little channel and then coming up and kind of film that a little bit faster, maybe 2-3 second intervals. Or if you're trying to get the mud to crack and dry out, you increase that to like 4 or 5 minutes, maybe with a heat lamp. But then you can start ramping your frames and changing them when it hits the plant, because the plant's going to grow on a different time scale as everything else is going to happen. So I'm constantly adjusting the time between one frame to the next. Now, when I need to make a change, what I'll do is I'll go into the system and I will stop it, and I basically lock a keyframe in the position I'm currently at on all of my axes. And then what I'll do is I'll just move the timeline slider out to the future and position myself on that future frame. The camera will move out to that new location, and then I can make any adjustments that I need. If I see, okay, it landed a little bit further back than I need, I can start adjusting the focus to where it's going to end up at that point when it gets to that new location. And then I can bring it back to the position it was just in, and that will allow it to continue forwards after. And it looks like it was never broken. The accuracy, the positioning on the systems have to be really good for that. I spent a lot of time trying to make sure that my systems are as accurate as possible. One of the things that I do quite a bit is indexing through Dragon Frame. And the idea of that is kind of similar to the multi-lapse that you see with Kessler. I'm not aware of any other programs that are really able to do it other than those two. But the idea is that you will create a camera arc for one move or one path, and then you might have another subject in the same set that you want to capture as well. So you bring the camera over and do whatever kind of arc you would wish with that, or any kind of however you want to manipulate the camera. And then you can even go with a third one or a fourth one, however many you want. And then when the camera when you first start shooting, it'll start in frame 1. And it'll take the frame 1 of move 1 and frame 1 of move 2 and frame 1 of move 3, and it will bounce around and gather all these frames and go back to the first one and wait for the next shoot command, in which it'll go through and cycle through all those again. So you can actually use one camera and basically interlace these time lapse and capture 5, 6, 10 at a time. I think the most that I ever did successfully was almond blossoms. I was working on Green Planet, and there was somebody in Colorado with an almond tree, and there's not a lot of people in Colorado with almond trees, and they were doing a bit about almonds. So they wanted to be able to get the footage of these flowers opening in front of a blue screen, and they wanted to get quite a bit of footage. They didn't want to just get one clip, and there was really only one opportunity to get it, because I got these 3 branches, and hopefully they were going to go ahead and sprout. And after that, there was just no chance to redo it. So instead of using one camera and only gathering one bit of footage out of it, I was able to successfully capture 14 different angles and kind of moves. And the team at Green Planet was able to go through and see which ones they liked the best and use those.
Interesting. Real quick, informal. Is my audio good for you now, Chris?
I just heard static as you were talking.
It's not. You talk, see if it's...
Does mine sound staticky?
Say that again.
Does mine? I'm assuming so. Then yes.
Well, no, it's just I wasn't sure if that was left over from Scott or you.
Oh.
Yes, I hear static with you.
Okay.
Maybe you and I can just host.
Yeah.
He's hearing it. With
It's
coming through our line somehow.
Gotcha. There's a question on the screen for you, Chris.
I think he's reading.
Yeah, Pete. Sorry, Pete had asked a question. Oh, it's right there on the screen now. Okay, it says, curious when you use a fogger versus straight watering the lower bottom pan. If you evolve one method to automate water versus another, I use probably about 10 to 15 methods of watering plants at this point. I have some sets like I'm working on a project right now for for a company called Drone Seed, and it's a company that works for reforestation. And their big thing about them is they use drones to reforest. And I don't want to get too into the IP on how they do that, but I was going to film a forest scene where there was little trees that are going to be erupting and growing out of the ground, and it needed to look like a burned area. So in a case like that, I expect that this is going to probably take anywhere from 30 to 60 days to be able to film this and get enough in there to really see these trees grow and to make it really visually impacting. And the problem is, if you have a lot of water coming into your set, you have a very onto the set that's dry, you have a very high chance of getting a whole bunch of algae on there. And the last thing you want to be doing is filming this where all of a sudden these little wet areas where the tree comes out grows up into and just starts spreading algae. You're not going to see that in the wild, so it kind of ruins the effect. So for something like that, I use like an ebb and flow hydroponic system that will actually wick up to where the seed is at and deliver water directly to the seed, but not saturate the entire set. Other times if I'm filming a forest scene that's supposed to be nice and wet and kind of in like tropical, I'll get a fogger and I'll just aim it right on that thing. And what I'll be using in the back in order to water all the plants might just be a standard off the shelf watering timer system that'll go directly at all the plants. And then all that material, a lot of that material is actually just like dead leaves and stuff like that, but you don't want to get it wet and then have it dry, because then you start running into a lot of problems with the leaves curling, and then that doesn't look good. So on a situation like that, and same with I'm shooting mushrooms, what I'll do is I'll get a big pond fogger, and I'll set it in a big bucket and just get a fan on there and then a tube that blows all that fog directly onto the set and just kind of smothers the set with the fog, keeps everything uniformly cool or everything uniformly wet. So in order to take the images, though, what I'll do is I'll set it up with a timer, and it'll shut off and quit blowing that fog maybe 3 minutes before it takes an image. And that gives it time for everything just to kind of settle away and dissipate. And then when it's done, it just starts blowing that fog back on. And that's one way I've learned to keep everything really uniformly wet. Mushrooms absolutely love being filmed in that kind of an environment. But there are other times where I have to do watering from underneath. I'm doing a shoot right now, another shoot for Drone Seed, where they've got this proprietary system that expands and creates like a little nest of substrate for a tree to live in. And in order to film that, I can't just be watering it from above. It's not a good idea. It's going to mess everything up. It's going to break all that stuff down. So in a case like that, I actually build a misting system beneath it and make a false bottom that uses some kind of a screen or some kind of a capillary matting as a wick to get it up into the subject that I wanted to get it from. So it really kind of depends on the type of shoot. Very often, I'm asked in order to shoot something and I have absolutely no idea how I'm going to manage to water it. And I just have to start cranking through. But at this point, I use a mixture of above ground watering, below ground watering, heavy fog, and various forms of hydroponics, from like cracky jars to ebb and flow systems and things like that.
Can you hear me now?
That static is, boy,
Really?
nice and staticky, unfortunately.
Just testing. My audio sound any better?
I'm at a loss here. Never had this happen.
Hey, Eric. I just saw your message. Yeah, thank you. You still have one of those Kronos rails, I guess. Those things are pretty much antiques at this point. Hopefully it still works. If not, feel free to send me whatever's broken. I'll be happy to fix it and send it back. I always love all the things that I build. I really enjoy making the things, and every one of them actually they all mean something to me. So it's something I just always want to make sure whatever I make is always working. But yeah, that's pretty cool that you have one of those.
Sorry, just jumping, trying to find the audio problems here.
You sound okay there. I mean,
Really?
yeah.
Okay, how about Eric?
Do I sound all right?
Eric, you sound buttery and smooth.
Ooh.
Okay.
What about me?
Jason,
Just as good.
There we go.
what in the world?
Got it running. Don't even know what you did?
I know what I did, but it shouldn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
Let me know if it goes poop again. Okay, so here, look at these legends. What's up, Dave? Scott is better, way better. That's weird. Okay, hello, Eric, and you other guys I will surely get to know soon. Hey, Ollie. Right after you sounded good, Scott, it got bad again right after? Really?
You still sound good to me right now.
That's so strange.
I don't. That's weird. Okay. I'm not changing anything. Y'all tell me if it sounds good. Chris, you say we sound good?
Yeah, so right now you sound fantastic.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right. So crackle is gone. Now you just have a small echo. Yeah, that we're not gonna be able to get rid of just because of this room and the way we have to hear Chris. Because Chris doesn't like it when we can't hear him because he talks and he's like, come on, guys, interact. Kind of like when we don't have microphones that work.
Yeah.
So I want to bring this in because this is something that I really was excited about, and it's not too many people know about it. And Chris, you also were really, I understand, excited about it, and that was that Cine Shooter. They made a version called a macro version, and
That was
Eric,
mostly because of Chris.
Eric, you want to describe what you did, and I guess Chris, you can talk about what it did for you. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, well, Chris he had been using some of our products for several years now, and obviously his work is probably the most demanding on any motion control system just because of how high of a level of zoom that he's operating. What is it, 10 times plus that your magnification?
Yeah, generally I'm sitting between maybe about 5 to 20 is the highest that I generally go.
Yeah, so at those magnifications, I mean, any kind of minute amount of stepping or, any kind of unwanted movement is exaggerated extremely. So as we got to know Chris, I just really, fell in love with the work that he was doing. It's magical, and I wanted to try to see if we could, make the product smoother at those magnifications. And Chris was tremendous at giving us feedback and testing the things that we were doing to try. So we were upping the encoder counts on, having a higher resolution, as well as reducing the gear ratio down to a lower gear ratio, giving us better control at those extremely slow speeds and small movements. I think Chris sent over some sample shots that he was doing where you had, 10 plus keyframes within 3 millimeters of movement. I mean,
Oh yeah.
yeah, I mean, it was, it looks like you're in this giant world, but it's moving 3 millimeters, so it's a pretty neat experience just to watch that. So yeah, we just pushed, Cine Shooter's great for doing all your, the standard unit for doing interviews and your traditional visual effects work and other motion control product shots, that type of thing. But, the level of resolution that he was needing for the work, it just wasn't there. So we had to basically magnify our, device to match what his magnification was. So we just basically took the resolution of the encoder up 4 times, and then we took the gear ratio down to 4 times slower, and that seemed to be kind of the sweet spot. And that's about the most we can do with that platform. There's a step we could take it further, but then it gets quite costly. And I think Chris had agreed that it wasn't worth the additional expenses to go beyond where the macro was working for him. But I'm going to let him speak to that. We haven't really spoke much since the release of it.
crackle is really bad. I don't know.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm not hearing much at this point.
I don't. This makes no
There's-
sense.
Here, Scott, if you want to let me share something, I can
Yeah,
speak about some of the stuff I was doing with the
Let me just try something.
shooter. Okay. So here, these are stinging nettles. It's a very unpleasant kind of plant. I wanted to film something that I knew that was going to be really challenging, that would have a really kind of a fun features to it. Let me get this out of the way so I can play. Hang on one second. I need to get this going. Okay, here we go. So this, I'm not exactly sure the magnification I'm starting out with this. I think it's about probably about 12 or 13 time magnification. And this was filmed, I think this was live, if I remember correctly. Or this was filmed with a live move. It was done very slowly. I think it was originally probably about 2 minutes worth. So I had to do a little bit of speeding up. But you can see in the background, see this little guy up here. He's just chilling there, hanging out. So I think this is probably about a 5-time speed increase. But I was using this lens from Infinity Optics. It's a really strange lens. It allows me to film up to 16-time magnification, but also allows me to focus out to infinity. And generally anything maybe about 3 or 4 inches away from the lens and infinity, when you're focused on infinity, are both in focus. So you can do some really interesting kind of force perspective things with that. But that was one. Let me see if I can get another one.
Everyone hearing the crackling while Chris was talking?
Oop. I'm sorry, I was not able to make that out. I'm going to do another screen share here real quick.
I have everything muted on my end. It's still doing it.
Okay, got a screen share up if you don't mind. So this is another example, also stinging nettles. And I mean, it's kind of fun because you can actually see the cellular level of the plant from here. And you can even see the little stomas, which are kind of like the lungs of the plant on the leaves. Same kind of thing. I'm just, the amount that the camera is moving is almost nothing. And it's just kind of drifting along and capturing this. And then I get to a point where I like to do kind of like a bit of a reveal and just pull back and kind of show a larger landscape. I mean, most people, when they see stinging nettles, they probably just think that's something I not want to touch. I mean, it kind of feels like a bee sting if they hit you, but they really do kind of like create like a really interesting landscape. You see this one here, I actually just sandwiched between a couple pieces of glass, so there's a lot of junk on here. But this is just kind of playing around, trying to see, what kind of a level of macro work can I get with the Cineshooter macro. And I got to say, it did not disappoint me at all. I had been getting a lot of requests to do this kind of work, this really extreme up close stuff. And then here's this nice little reveal.
Question about what lens are you using for larger than 5x?
Okay, so larger than 5x, I got a couple different options for it. I mean, the 5x I use that Laowa. It's a 2.5 to 5-time macro lens, and that's a fun lens. It's one of those fixed ones where there's not a lot of ability to, there's no focus with it. There is that focal plane, and you just have to be within there. But that one does work pretty good. Then I also have I have a couple others. I've got on this one behind me. That's a Wii Macro objective microscope setup. And that one's a lot of fun too, but you can't do the camera pull back. There's no focus shift. The one that really is my favorite for this kind of work is this one from Infinity Optics. It's a T160 Robusto Light. And it's a strange lens to use. I've had kind of a love-hate relationship with it. I've done a lot of focus stacking work with it, both for stills, but also for time lapse. And it's got some interesting optical properties, but sometimes there's just certain things it doesn't seem to film well. I don't know if it's an issue with the lighting. It's very narrow in aperture already, so it's kind of living in the land of diffraction, but it can do things that I've never seen another macro setup do, and that's actually shift your focus from infinity all the way down to a 16 time macro. It's absolutely a blast to use. Let's see. We got Jared asks, sorry to ask, but what lights are you using? So that really kind of depends. When it comes to this kind of time lapse, flicker is always the thing that's really a challenge to get through. And there's a lot of different ways to go about it. I've tried a ton of different lighting situations, but right now, what I use more than anything else, believe it or not, are DigiBees from Paul C. Buff. The DigiBee D8, or I think it's the 800 model. You can sit there and put that thing anywhere from full power all the way down to about -3 stops, or 3 stops down, and there's no flicker at all. The outpulse from it is absolutely spot on every single time. Other lights that I've used in the past, like I had some Ellenchroms that just did not perform nearly as well for that. Those and the reason is that it needs to be full power in order to get that consistent output. But just the DigiBees, they were really nice to find them because those things are so cheap. They're virtually disposable. I can buy a whole bunch of them and I don't have to spend $6,000 for a light. Other than that, I mean, people might be really kind of disappointed to learn that I don't actually use like $10,000 lighting setups for everything, or virtually anything for that matter. Most of the lighting that I use is just either low power LED panels. I know that if you're doing video with LED, there's a big chance that you're going to run into the issue with the cycle of the LED causing those bands to go down. You can run into that with time lapse, definitely. But if you just open it up and just let it expose for a longer period, instead of trying to get like that 1/100th of a second, you open that up to maybe 1 second or a half a second for exposure. It's just those pulses that come through, those samples even out very nicely, and then you just see no more flicker. So generally I'll use strobes for the most part because I like that harsh light, especially with plants. You just light them from the back and just let it pop through the leaves, and it's always a nice view. Let's see.
Can you hear me now, or is it crackly?
Yeah, you sound good at the moment.
That's weird. Okay. How about Eric?
Do I sound all right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And me.
You're gonna have to talk loud at the moment.
Oh.
All right.
Me.
Well, let me know if the crackle comes back. Sorry, I don't know how to troubleshoot without booting the stream, and if I boot the stream, everyone goes away. It's a problem. Ian has a question there for you, Chris.
Oh, is that what aimed towards me about the run-in too?
I mean, at launch, the Ronin 2 promised a programmable. Would that be a useful tool for you? I guess a general question to anybody.
Well, for me personally, the Ronin 2s, I mean, the Ronins and any of those gimbals and stabilizers always looked really cool. I thought they looked like a lot of fun. It's just the work that I do never really branches out for an opportunity to use those, so I've never really had a chance to own one. I mean, the best I can say is that I've got a couple of those DJI pockets that I'll use for little behind the scenes videos. But the Ronin 2, I mean, most of the stuff that I do, it's such long-term work that the benefits of using like a Ronin just really aren't there for me. But I know quite a few people that do have them and do like them. I don't know. What about you guys? Scott?
I've not been super, well, I mean, for anything small in motion or even macro in any way, it hasn't been excitable for me. You guys, I guess.
Well, if Joel was here, he could probably speak to it, whether he'd use it or not. I don't do any of the shooting here anymore, so that's all on Joel. So I don't have an opinion on that.
Yeah. Good audio, okay. Haven't seen the video from the almond flower shoot you talked about. Was it outside? And if so, were there bugs all over the flowers?
Okay, so no, the almond flowers were not shot outside. There was a gentleman who was one of the directors of the Botanic Gardens here in Denver, and the BBC had been in contact with him and found out that he actually had an almond tree out in his yard. And like I said, they're not really that common here. I think we're just a little bit higher altitude, a little bit cooler than those trees generally prefer. But he had one, and he said he'd be happy to let us know when it was ready to start to flower. So once it got close to it, I went out there and grabbed a Home Depot bucket and a little bit of sugar, a little bit of bleach, and mixed up some water, and then went over and cut the couple branches off and stuffed them in there. And I drove them home to my studio where I put them up in the blue screen. So all of those were shot indoors. Those are, you might be able to see those. I don't know if it's come out yet. I believe it's the Humans episode on BBC's Green Planet. That started airing on PBS probably 3 or 4 weeks ago. They're doing one episode a week. And I know that they've got the Tropics episode out. I believe they've got the Desert and the Water. And then there's also a Seasons and a Human episode. And I believe it's in the Human episode. It's funny, though, because it ended up being a pretty short, quick clip that was used in it. It's amazing how you might sit there and spend like a month filming something just to find the end result comes out, and it's like there for like 2 seconds and gone. If you watch that episode, you should see it. I do believe it's the Humans episode.
What takes longer, setting up and training the motion control for the way you want it to end up with a particular plant species, or learning how to grow the plant species itself where it's going to look good on camera?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. I'm always learning. I am constantly exploring new ways to grow plants.
Yeah, it's not just motion control and photography and time lapse of it. You got to learn how to actually grow a pretty plant.
Yeah, you actually do. There's a lot of factors in there. There's a lot of things you have to learn about what plants need, the kind of light they need, and stuff like that. There really is a ton that goes into it. I'd say it's probably about 50% prep and about 50% shooting. You know, I'll spend quite a bit of time designing a set and creating it to make it look nice. There's always engineering involved with that because no two asks are really ever the same. I've got a lot of different solutions on how to light things and water things and stuff that build up from just doing different types of shoots. But that's definitely something that takes a long time. You know, I'll have to get an area, clean it all out, make sure the robot's there and ready to go. Any maintenance that needs to be done with it. And then I got to build the set, which usually involves 2x4s, logs, chicken wire, cloth, tons of leaves, and just other ground debris. In fact, it's always fun trying to source that stuff. I remember when I was working on Green Planet, there was a tropical scene that we were doing that was for a Nepenthes, which is the kind of plant that forms that nice big pitcher that bugs fall into. In order to do that, we had to get a whole bunch of tropical ground cover. So out in Colorado, there's the Colorado Botanic Gardens. They have a big conservatory, I believe is what it's called. It's just this big dome, and it's all these tropical plants in there. So it was fun going over there. They got a whole bunch of this leaf litter and gave it to me, and I had to come back and get all the cockroaches out of it, which you normally don't see in Colorado, all the other bugs you normally don't see in Colorado, and little critters, and of course you miss some of them. And sometimes then all of a sudden you're out in the studio and realize something has hatched, and then you got a whole other thing you got to deal with whatever it hatched, and how many of them hatched and where they ran off to. But once you get everything up and running, and everything seems to be working, then you go ahead and you kind of program out the plot of the camera and stuff like that. And get it all in there. And for the first few days, it's just like holding your breath to see, is anything going to go wrong? Is anything going to fail? Because unfortunately, there's really no turnkey systems to do any of this kind of work. So you have to kind of just be creative and kind of invent a lot of things. You have to learn how pumps work. You have to learn about water levels. You got to learn about nutrients and lighting requirements for plants. Not all of them like the same amount of light. I was recently filming a tree and kind of something that was similar to a Jiffy plug, trying to film the roots coming out, and I built an entire fogponic system that would flood it with nutrient-rich fog into the chamber. and that would keep the plant nice and healthy. And then for it to take an image, I'd have to evacuate all of that fog out of it, and then blow air onto the glass to get rid of all the condensation that formed, and then go ahead and take the picture of the plant, and then it would start to fill back up with fog. In order to get that fog to move around, I had to build an agitator with fins that would sit in the back and spin and kind of stir everything up. So it's interesting because there's always like probably about 7-8 different things that you have to figure out and get to work together and time together in order to pull it off. But it's a lot of fun when it actually works.
Yeah.
Here's a question, Eric, Jason. Any new product release teasers to expect today?
Nothing today, but we do have a new product coming out probably sometime mid to late August, and there's a couple other that are in the works, but we don't really have a defined timeline on those yet. They're still in. One is nearing production prototype, and then it's usually 2 months after that before release, and the other two, one that we're really excited about, that one is still in proof of concept stage right now. So that one's probably going to at best be the end of the year, and that's if everything goes smoothly. But nothing's going smoothly now with supply chains and everything else. So, just getting one made is difficult enough, let alone trying to make multiples of something right now.
Second question, have you thought about making a macro slider?
We could do that. We've had.
Yeah, why not?
We can always whip you up one real quick, Chris. We just haven't had a lot of, we are very reliant on our customer base telling us what it is that they're wanting, and if we hear it multiple times, then that's when we start looking those directions. How many have you been asked many times for a macro slider? I'm assuming you're talking for Chris's style of work where you only need several inches of movement. I would think that's what they would mean.
What would a macro slider entail exactly?
Well,
Precision.
do like a ball lead screw type device of some sort. We could. We just have, making one of something is not that difficult. It's still very time consuming for one, but that's still something that can be done in days. To, produce it in large quantities, there's a lot of tooling involved and sourcing and things like that. So we have to make sure that before we enter into that process that, really for us, we have to make a minimum of 100 of something to make it, that would be our absolute minimum to make it worth our while and to make it affordable enough for the consumer. Making a batch of 25 of something, we can do it. It's just you have to amortize the cost of the production over only 25 pieces, and then it gets so expensive. Most people are like, well, I want it, but it's now more than what I'm willing to spend. So trying to budget those things, and like I said, usually it's 100-piece minimum to try to get near that consumer accepted price versus making worth our while to invest in tooling and that type of all the support from the manufacturing side to make it worthwhile for everybody to do it. So it's always juggling all of those things. So again, if we hear enough demand for it, we would definitely do it. That's what we want to do, is build tools that people need. So as soon as we, see a need for it, then we would put a lot of attention towards that.
Neat suggestion, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
It'd be neat to hear all of the various little, I would like to be able to do this, and this. All of that adds up into, a potentially good product that everyone wants.
Yeah, and a lot of times what we'll do is we'll hear a lot of niche needs, but then after we hear it enough, maybe we'll come up with a product that might cover a lot of those. So that makes it more of a unit task, or instead of a unit tasker, it'd be, something a little bit more broad in its abilities and open up to a larger market of people. Therefore, we can sell quite a few more of those and make it worth, the time that it would take to get that production line or the production process in place.
Another question for you here. Any possibility there to make your latest fizz motor work with Movi Pro via Mimic Movi control?
I know that I'd have to look at what their platform is. I know they're running brushless motors, and I mean, there's always a way to convert. I don't know. So we're an encoded DC, cordless motor system. We'd have to see if it's compatible with their motor drivers. I'm going to say, like, just plugging in, definitely not. I'm quite certain. There may be some driver conversions that can be done, but we'd have to see what their power capabilities are. We require at least 1 amp of current. So we'd have to just take a look at their system. But I mean, if you don't mind me asking, what would be the reason for wanting to do that? Movi has their own, don't they offer their own
They
focus
do.
motors?
Yeah,
They're pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, that is an interesting question. Is it a reason to say cost, that, you just buy one and it works for everything, or what is the drive behind that?
It might just be for the universal use between two platforms. Sure. We started developing motion control. We're still using the same platform that we always have since Cinedrive. And we've stuck with it because it's good, it's cost efficient, it's what we know. And if we switch to going to like brushless, we've looked at doing that. Matter of fact, we put quite a bit of time going to brushless. And brushless, you got, cordless, brushless. There's all kinds of different style of encoded DC motors out there, and they all have their, uses. Brushless provides a higher efficiency of power, but also there's a lot more motor management that goes on, and the cost is quite a bit higher. And for some applications, that's needed. For motion control, if we swapped out, we looked at doing this, and if we switched everything out in Senate Shooter to brushless, it would probably add $200 to $300 worth of cost on just the component pieces that takes to drive that. And when we did do some prototypes, there was no obvious benefit to the consumer. I mean, it would be about 20% more powerful, but what we have now is already, quite powerful, more than what most of our customers need. So you'd gain some power, but we already provide more than what the average person needs. And there was a slight noise reduction in some areas of the RPM range, but it wasn't drastic, not enough to make it, like an oh wow type of thing. I got to have that to, spend that much more. So we find the cordless motors kind of give you the best, cost to performance ratio for motion control applications. Now, if you're doing something that's super high torque, you're building a leaf blower or a power tool or something like that where you're running super high RPMs at super high torque requirements, definitely brushless is the way to go. The reason why your gimbals are doing it is because they don't run any gear reduction. They're direct drive off the motor, and they provide a lot of shaft torque right off of the motor, probably 20, 30% more than a cordless would. But being that we have to run gear reduction drives anyhow for the style or for the type of device that we're using, you're going to still get that additional gear noise because you cannot run not accurately or efficiently a motion control off a direct drive because they can be back driven so easily. So they can never really hold their position. They might be able to hold it in a perfect vacuum environment, but if anything brushed up against it or moved it, just like you grab your Movi, they're holding that camera, but if you go bump against it, it will move. And it can correct with an encoded system, but again, you don't want it to ever move. You want it to hold that position precisely throughout its trajectory. So it's kind of a different use. So that's why we stick with the motor platform that we currently are at. I would love to go to brushless. I'm a geek when it comes to tech, and I think they're a higher level motor in some regards, but it just doesn't apply to the application of our product.
And then they specify, it's one fizz for all platforms.
Yeah.
The last fizz you'll ever buy, I guess. Let's see here. And there's a question from Ollie here. When are the soft shuttle dolly wheels available as an option?
As soon as Joel gets back from his vacation. That's been the only holdup. We've been sitting here. As a matter of fact, they've been shipping with them, or some of them have been already. The new ultra-thane wheels are amazing. So that's always been the battle with the shuttle dolly wheels on different platforms. There's competing products out there that they're softer and they're more forgiving over like less precision rail. But then if you leave them sit, they dent, and then you fight that. So you can't let them sit for very long. So we have the traditional shuttle dolly wheels, which are a harder compound in the urethane family, and they will not dent, and they work beautifully on our quick rail because they're centerless ground precision rail. But if you go use it like on a grip truck speed rail, it's been beat up, you will feel the bumps in that. So we've been fighting that, how do we come up with the perfect wheel? And we've done it. I mean, we've came up with a wheel that feels just as soft and forgiving as some of the softer wheels that are out in the market, but it will not dent. So it was a blend of different urethane compounds. We worked with the company extensively, telling them what our needs were, and then, we must have went through dozens of samples of different materials outside the urethane family. So it's a composite material and different layers too as well, to come up with one that can run over rusty pipe and still feel extremely smooth, and yet leave it sit. We left it sit over, 4 days with 100 pounds on the cart, and came back no denting and still just as smooth. So we feel like we've solved that issue. But that's been 5 years in the making, on and off. Not full-time dedication over 5 years, but something we kept revisiting and trying to solve. And then as different materials came out on the market, our vendors would be like, hey, there's this new material, and we're like, hey, let's try that on those wheels. And then more often than not, we didn't get any. We'd gained some ground in some areas and not in the others. And then it was actually the casting technique that we came up with that allowed us to not only blend composite materials, but then how we layer them up to build the wheel made it, it was kind of the magic formula.
Yeah, I can attest. I've been playing with them for a little bit, and my current Frankenrig 2.1, which is even further than it has been before, it's about 100 pounds, and it does not dent. It is really smooth, and I started putting some really junky rails on there just to see. It's kind of amazing. So they are definitely, people are going to have smiles on their faces, especially if they have to use, less than really, really smooth rail.
I might have to reach out to you guys afterwards on this, because I'm curious about those. I've one of my gantry rigs, actually both of my gantry rigs use kind of like a V shape with like the wheels on there in order to move the gantry forward and backwards. And there's another sub gantry that goes left and right for that X and Y movement. And one thing I've noticed is if that robot sits there for probably a week or two without being used, that first time I start moving it, I have to go up and actually rotate all those wheels just a little bit to make sure that when they do hit that flat spot, they're not all hitting at the same time, because then I get like a little lurch that translates into the movement.
Yep.
So that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
And if all of them are at the exact same time, it's a
it compounds the problem.
right.
Times 16.
Yeah. Let's see here. Chris, there's a question for you. Have any mentors or resources for indoor botany, especially for the plants not usually grown indoors? Are you self-taught? Appreciate you giving the BTS for your awesome work.
No, actually, I am completely self-taught. A lot of people that are listening into this, and a lot of people that are, present for this, probably have a very long background when it comes to cinema work, working with equipment, doing just filming things in general. And for me, that my main background, honestly, was telecom. I spent 20 years doing it. This all started as kind of a little side hobby. When it came to shooting the plants, I couldn't find any information. I knew that there was somebody who did it because I'd seen this work on Planet Earth and things like that, but I didn't know who it was, because it's just the guy doesn't really put himself out there too much. He's already just embedded with the BBC. They always go for him. His name is Tim Shepard. But I wasn't aware of his existence until after the BBC reached out to me. I actually thought they just had to put together a small team of people, and you'd have like an engineer, maybe an engineer, a cinematographer, a photographer, someone who's an expert in time-lapse photography, a few different things like that, and they would work together to accomplish this. And that was one of my drives moving forward, is like, I want to see if I can learn how to do all of this on my own. So the actual amount of information on how to pull this off is very limited because I have such unique needs when it comes to the plants that I'm growing. A lot of people, they're growing carnivorous plants, or like something really tricky, like some of the like carnivorous plants. A lot of them are really tricky to grow. I didn't have a lot of um, I didn't have a lot of resources out there that could help me to within my specific application because I couldn't keep them in a greenhouse when I'm shooting them. I needed to control the day and night. And then, with the way that people will normally grow them indoors, they have the lights this high off of them, and I needed to get more light. I needed to get that light out of the way so I could actually film them. So pretty much all of it was self-taught, which is probably why I stand on an incredible mountain of failures in the past, because I never really had anybody to just kind of link me to that next step. It wasn't until I went out to, or until the second time the BBC came out to come see what I was doing. The first time they came out, it was a producer and one of their researchers. Met them, kind of showed them what I was doing. And then the second time, they actually brought Tim Shepard and his assistant Todd out to come see me. And Tim Shepard he knows everything there is to know about plants. I don't think there's anything he doesn't know. He's also a brilliant film cinematographer. He's got an amazing eye, and he just really knows what he's doing. And it was absolutely cool to be able to have him come out, see my studio, see what I was doing and stuff like that. I remember one time while we were there, I had these big pots that I had, it was a big planter that had a glass front that was a little bit of an angle. And the idea is I was putting a seed in front of that glass and then filming it as it would grow. And then once it started to grow and pull the head up, I started moving the camera up to kind of match the growth of the plant and got it from, we were going from a seed to a full fruited vegetable of different types. And I remember I had to clear all this barley out of one of these things, and he came in, he was helping me out, and he just dove right in. When I went to the UK to go install some robots for them out in their studios, I went out to Tim Shepard's studio and had another opportunity to meet him and spend some time working with him and his assistant, and did everything I could to absorb everything I could from that experience. But he's a busy person, and I just, for the most part, I've been kind of plugging along, and pretty much all of this has really just been self-taught. Watch some YouTube videos, start experimenting around, and just kind of see where things can go.
Do you ever animate your lights, like move them? Like you were talking about, some of those they have the lights just on top of them. Do you ever do that? Is there
Yeah, I can. You can build like a hoist thing to take the light and lower it down to the plants, or to bring it back up. But I generally found other ways to go about it. But I have animated sets in order to kind of move things out of the way from one image to the next. And I've also have actually animated lights to where it will be on a track and the light will be on a little pan tilt and it aims down at the set, and it will go from one side to the other of the robot on that gantry and keep that light angled at it. And in the end, the effect is not really all that noticeable. So it just becomes another point of potential failure. So unless somebody really wants that, that's not something I generally do. I've already got so many things that are going on at any moment with any one of these shoots, to where if one thing goes wrong, the whole shoot will get messed up, that I try not to introduce too much complexity. It just becomes a lot more things that I have to kind of watch and babysit.
how many different projects? Well, I mean, what at the same time? How many different projects do you typically have? Have you most had? And I mean, at the same time.
I've had at most, I think, probably 7 or 8 shoots running at a time. I mean, when you're running the shoot, I mean, it may just be that it's sitting there and plugging away and everything goes right. And for 3 weeks, you really don't need to do much, but other than go in and take a look at it and check the water levels. But other times, I'll wake up in the middle of the night. I've got a PC in my office that I will keep remote sessions from all my different robots, because each one of my robots has its own dedicated laptop to control it. I don't want to do everything on one laptop and have one Windows update shut everything down at night. So they each have their own, and I'll remote into each of those and have the ones that are the ones I'm most concerned about on a monitor. And, I might wake up in the middle of the night to go get a glass of water or something and look in and see, and all right, I'm going to go put on my shoes and I'm going to go out and work for the next 30 minutes trying to figure out why something shut down. But it can get really difficult maintaining that many shoots at a time. And the more you do, it really does start to impact the capability to do the rest. Right now, at this moment, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shoots running. And they're all going relatively well, which is nice, but just about every day something goes wrong with one of them and I have to spend time with that. But other than that, once they're up and going, it's not a lot of time dedicated to it unless there's some kind of a catastrophic failure of like a hydroponic system or something that requires basically ripping the whole set out and replumbing it. But my studio is right next to my house. It's on my property, so it's my workshop. I'm always here, and I'm pretty much working almost 24/7. I force myself to take time out, and spend time with the family and stuff like that. But pretty much I'm here. I'm usually working.
And are you, like, if you're doing, let's just say you're growing a mushroom, do you go and look in nature to see how it actually grows and where it grows to try to replicate that as much as possible, or?
Within reason. So if I'm working on a project for a client, I'm going to do everything I can to source plants that are going to be local to the area that you would realistically find around it. Yes. But if I'm just kind of trying to get a little bit of footage of ferns unfurling or doing some vines crawling up or a cactus growing, I've actually have gotten some footage of cactus growing. They do grow very slow. It generally, I will try to make a scene that's relatively convincing, but I'm not going to burn a ton of energy on that footage right there because it's more of just footage, just me experimenting, learning, and maybe just getting some footage that I can throw up on YouTube, Instagram, stuff like that people might enjoy. So it really kind of depends on the importance of the shoot. If there's money behind the shoot, then yes, I'm going to be spending a lot of time making sure that I source things that are accurate and representative of that area.
Eric, I think this one's for you. Will you have an update for the fizz motor to calibrate to different lenses so to prevent focus ring jumping?
Well, I'm assuming you're speaking of using like the phone app to control. Right now, Chaos, you can calibrate your focus motors.
I think
Is that what
I think they're asking, can they save calibration so that you put a 35 millimeter on there, you put a Zine 50 millimeter, different lenses.
Like lens mapping?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about that. It's very labor intensive for the consumer to map it out. I mean, in a way you kind of can now using Chaos. It's probably clunky doing it, but when he's asking the question to prevent the focus ring jumping, I'm assuming that's on a photography lens. That's where you jump past, the slip ring.
Or if you hit a hard stop and the
Or that, yeah. I mean, you can do that with Chaos right now. We are going to add in, so with the phone app, the remote apps, we wanted to make that super fast and simple. So we took calibrations out. So you can just grab it, set it up, move it, record keyframes, and go. With Chaos, it's a little bit more for, what would you say, higher level, more precision work and a lot more flexibility and control. It's a little more time consuming, but we force the user to calibrate every axis. So you have a hard begin and a hard end to each motor axis. And then once you've set those motors won't run outside of that. So like with a hard stop lens, you would just go to your near hard stop limit, mark begin, and then go to the other limit, mark end. Now you can, move that anywhere within that range. You'll never hit your hard stops or slip on your photography lens ring. So if that's what you're asking, yes, you can do that with Chaos. So we're going to actually, in the future, we're getting ready to come out with another Chaos quicker release. It does have some pretty neat features, some that Chris had requested. So I'm excited to share that with you, a beta release here pretty soon, Chris. But we're going to make it with Chaos to where you can turn off the requirement for calibrations, and then also for the phone apps that doesn't have calibrations, you'll be able to turn that on. But it'll default with no calibrations, phone app default 2 calibrations in Chaos, and you can turn those on and off on both platforms. Because we hear it from both sides. You know, people are like, I want to use Chaos, but it takes me so long to set up because I have to calibrate every axis. So we're going to make it to where you don't. And then the phone app, most people you don't because you're right there. But then they're like, I want calibrated because I'm using it on client mode and it's, I don't know, somewhere else on the property, and I want to make sure I'm not running into things since I can't see the unit. So we hear all the different needs, and we're going to eventually cover all of them, and we just keep chipping away.
Question here, probably Chris here. I built some of my own motion control kit 8-axis system. From what I hear, even a bolt will wobble, vibrate. At macro level, a perfume bottle, etc. How do you work with vibration while composing? And then also, essentially, how much vibration is acceptable when, I guess, compositing is what you're asking. And then, hi, Chris, we know each other from DIY Motion Control. Great Facebook group for those who don't know. I don't, Chris, we don't hear you. Chris? Oh, he's muted. You're you're muted. You're
Anyway, if I say
and that's everything.
thank you.
Yeah.
I gotta go.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's
now
the meaning
that,
of life?
All right, now that my mute is off. Generally, when it comes to vibrations, it's not too much of an issue with my work. I've got 2 macro shooting systems that I've developed that I use for doing a long time lapse. And the way that they work is I have an XY stage with a turntable on it, and then I've got a camera on a riser with a pan tilt and a focus adjustment, or it might have a little slider on it if I'm doing focus stack time lapse. And it keeps everything small enough that where I'm taking the images, it just doesn't really matter because I'm taking an image every 10 minutes or something. So they don't really have a problem with that. The only real time I have a DMC 16 from Dragon Frame, which is supposed to allow real time. But I'm going to be honest, when it comes to do-it-yourself motion control, making something that can accurately move on all levels real time is very difficult. I have managed to get footage filmed with both of my gantry rigs real time, as well as those macro rigs real time. But if I have a real time requirement, I'm going to be coming over to one of my smaller pan tilt heads that's made by, like, it's a consumer product. For example, the Cineshooter Macro. That works a lot better. Now with the Cineshooter Macro, if I'm trying to film in things, I can actually set A, B, C, D keyframes on there, and I can film it live, and the movement is smooth enough that even if I'm using like a Lauer probe lens where you're sticking that front element way out there and it's just going to exaggerate any vibration that there is, there's really not much vibration at all. You might find that when you're done filming, you might want to take it into Resolve or maybe Adobe Premiere Pro or something and just give it just a little kiss of stabilization is all it needs. You don't need to be heavy-handed. You can go very light with it. But what I found is the biggest, most important thing when doing live work, capturing macro, is you have to have a solid floor. You can't have anything touching anything. In fact, I use nice long cables where things are nice, easily draped to where there's no snagging, no pulling. I make sure there's no wind or anything in the environment. So if I'm in my studio, I'll make sure I'm not sitting somewhere where my mini split might be blowing air that might hit it. My studio is on a monolithic slab, so it's a very solid platform. But even then, if I'm sitting at 10 to 20 magnification, I can see anything that happens, any vibration that's in the room. So an incredibly stable floor is like one of the most important things. And then you have everything separated out. I'll have the Cineshooter Macro on a tripod. In front of that, I will have a stool, like a bar stool or something, like one of those wooden ones, or some kind of a platform of which I'll have the set or the subject or whatever it is I'm going to be filming. And then I'll make sure that anything else that I have, that nothing's actually touching it. You know, if I'm going to be adding a light, I'll bring in a light stand and put in a little cube light or something and bring it really close down in there. And for the live stuff, that's kind of how I deal with it, and it's not really that big of a deal once you get things that stable. One thing I have noticed though is, like, just most of the time what I will do is I will figure out how I want to film it, and I don't like starting from a stop, and I don't like ending at a stop. To me, when things stop and they start, I notice it. So I will always shoot a little bit before the move that I intend and a little bit after the move that I intend. And I'm really just wanting to record the middle portion of it. So that way, when I start out, it has kind of removed all the vibrations. But when it comes to my larger Dragon frame rigs, I really just don't have to worry about that so much. I can walk through the studio, vibrations will be there. They generally don't really cause a problem. I mean, think about it this way. I might be shooting 2-to-1 macro on one of those systems and repositioning the camera 9 times between every frame, and it can still line up darn near pixel to pixel from one image to the next when you look at one frame to the next. So yeah, it's not something that I've really put a lot of effort into worrying about, but that's because some of the guys over on that do-it-yourself motion control group are building, full out live action systems that they want to be fast and responsive and very little vibration. And that's something that I really enjoy watching people do that. It's amazing the challenges that people run into that and the ways that people come around finding a way through.
And it's a cool group. I mean, it's out there on Facebook. You should join it just to see what other people are thinking, because I always see someone else's idea of what they're thinking sparks 6 ideas over here. It's worth it to do it. I could definitely attest to, if you have concrete floor, it's much better. My dog will scratch during the middle of the shoot. I'm like, really, dude, you just blew the whole thing. I mean, he weighs 150 pounds, but I mean, still. Question for you, Chris. What's the longest duration time lapse that you've done, and do you still have failures?
Yeah, I still have failures. Definitely. It's very seldom that you'll have a shoot where it'll go through and everything happens the way that you want it the first time you try. For example, this drone company that I'm filming for, I'm filming some of their these little. I don't want to give a lot away. They're these little proprietary substrate things that they have, and I am on my 5th attempt at filming it, and that's because I am trying to get a very specific outcome that I am relying on the plants to behave. I'm hoping that the lights behave. I'm hoping that the cameras behave. I'm hoping that my computer doesn't reboot in the middle of the night and lose 6 hours worth of footage. There's a lot of steps that you can take to mitigate all of this. But I would say when it comes to most of my shoots, once I get a large set built and everything, the footage that's the success is usually not the first time I shot it. If it's one of those situations where I got one shot to do it, then it's just all stops taken to make sure that you're eliminating as much complexity as possible and making it giving it the highest chance of success. As for the longest time lapse I've done, I have one that's been going for about 2 years now and is still running. And it's just a little Fuji camera that's up in the corner of my studio, and it has been filming my studio for about 2 years. Every day, every hour, it takes one image, and it's been running about 2 years nonstop. And every time I think about pulling it, because you'll see my sets actually grow with this camera. You'll see that I've got like a whole bunch of sunflowers in buckets that are growing because it's cold outside. So I got a bunch of lights on them, and everything changing around and stuff moving around like that. And I'm really eager to see it. But then I think I could go a little bit longer with this. But I've got quite a few time lapses under the belt now that are exceeding a year in duration, and quite a few of them that are actually still going right now, especially with that reforestation company. With them, we have 16 cameras that we're trying to get out throughout all these different logging trails and areas that have encountered burns where they've gone in and done their thing, and we're trying to film the actual reforestation. So I'm kind of hoping that we can get 4, 5, 6 years on those. But yes, I absolutely still do have failures. Just about every success I have several failures of trying to get it to work right. And it might be the plant didn't work right, or it might be my timer didn't work right, or a pump didn't work right. There's a million things that can go wrong. So I fail
So
all the
no
time.
plans, no plans to time lapse like a redwood from seed to maybe a sequoia.
Not a redwood. Maybe some ponderosa pines, some Douglas firs. Yeah, we want to get those. We're hoping to get I would like to get this. I want this project to go for 10 years. What this company's wanting to do is they feel very passionately about. I mean, it's a reforestation company, so obviously they're very passionate about the environment and trying to do something about these wildfires that are just decimating forests. Because once a wildfire comes through, you're going to get like crap like scrub oak jumping up, and it's going to take over and it's going to choke out all the other plants. If you don't actively try to restore the forest, it's basically just gone forever. So one of the things that they want to do is they want to prove that their system works, but they also want to do something that shows kind of like a view of hope, a positive thing for the future. Kind of think if you ever saw that documentary Chasing Ice, which was about glacial retreat. What they're trying to do is something that's in the opposite and show a success, something that's making the world better, instead of just instead of noting what's wrong with it. I mean, I absolutely love that documentary, but I like the idea of where they're going with this too. So yeah, not a redwood, but Douglas firs, ponderosa pines, maybe even some koa.
Have you talked about your electromagnet can tosser? I see it in the background.
Yeah, I've got this. I've got a buddy who works over at a company. It's his company, Man Made Media, and he's here in Colorado, and he's got a bolt arm, and he's really excited about integrating different things in with Flare and with that, Mr. Moko package. And one of the things he's wanting is something that can reliably lob a can of beer in the air. The idea is not to put it through a wall or damage a $50,000 camera with it or hurt someone. It's literally just meant to toss it. But if you've got this robot next to you and your only job is to just toss a can of beer repeatedly, reliably, well, they try to tweak that thing to be able to match that throw every time. You can't do it. So you really, even if it's just a light toss, you have to find some kind of a mechanical way to do it. Using a magnet or electromagnet in order to release it means that I can take, hundreds of pounds of force back here and just hang on to it. And then I can run it through a relay and tie it in with the flare. And then when the camera is moving and it hits a certain frame, it can release that magnet and instantly shoot that can of beer. So that's where they can reliably do it. It's still a work in progress. I'm hoping to have it finished by this weekend. I'm actually printing a new piston for it right now out of polycarbonate because the last one that I did even cracked, and that was polycarbonate, and that's like one of the toughest 3D printing materials there are. So now I'm using a special form of polycarb that's about 4 times stronger. So it's that's like a 19-hour print. So some of these things take time, but yeah, that's what that is.
Didn't you develop a flame mortar too, or something that shot flames in the air?
Yeah. I made a fireball generator. That's over at his studio too right now.
So is there any potential of firing a beer can and having a blast of fire at the same time?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. He's
Meet me Friday night.
this guy does really amazing work, and he's got a really sweet studio with some really sweet equipment, and he's got that robot. And one thing he's wanting to do is get a little bit more into more of the tricky stuff like that, where you're orchestrating 5 or 6 different events to all go off at a certain time in order to kind of pull off that visual. So I have a feeling I'm going to be building quite a few things for him over the next few years, little gadgets and
Some
stuff
of these
like
ideas
that.
you hear about, you think those have to have come from some adult beverages that were consumed to create the ideas of launching adult beverages.
Yeah, you get some of the best ideas and some of the worst ideas.
And then you don't remember them, depending on how good they were. It's certainly complex building something for real life, real-time video. I'm the guy on that forum whose rig came apart. For those considering building something, it's tough. Hats off to what Kessler does.
I think I know
Yeah, we
what
felt-
you're talking about. Yeah, I think that's the that was the bearing that came apart, and I think it was the pan tilt came off of the rail, if I'm thinking correctly. Ooh.
Before I ever found Kessler, I bought a pan and tilt off of the interweb. I mean, I'm sure it was amazing. I spent a lot of money on it, and I had it suspended from a homemade jib that will never be seen again. And I have my camera mounted up there, everything's cool, and then it just falls straight out from the bottom. And fortunately, the power cable held it from hitting the ground. But I was shocked. I'm like, this is going on the trash. And I was like, there's got to be something better. And then Kessler.
Well, we had
Yeah, I
days
think
like
we've
that
all
in the
got
beginning.
some of those things that we built that they'll never see air. They'll never see light of day again. You know?
Yeah.
The very first
We
thing I
have
built
a lot of
was a barn
stories.
door star tracker that was made out of plywood with a door hinge. It was bad.
Yeah.
Let's see. Hey, who's got some questions? Throw some out there. Now that we got the audio working, it's like
I think it was mine.
it was something to do with that cable
Yeah.
going in. It just freaked out with that. I mean, I'm glad we found it. I'm just sad that Jason is quieter now.
That's all right. Just getting closer to Eric over here. So yeah, Chris, I wanted to tell you it's some amazing work that you're doing that I've seen. It's the first time I've seen any of your work, so it's
Oh, thank
very
you.
impressive and really neat stuff. It's
Yeah,
neat being able to talk to you on the phone, you know, and put a face to the name and then see what we're actually talking about. So
Oh yeah, yeah. It's always a pleasure. It's fun making these kind of connections too. You know, it's so impersonal buying a roll of Bounty. You know, but
sure,
it's
yeah.
nice when you can deal with the companies and you can really kind of form a relation with them. You know, and talk about things that you want to do and stuff like that, and you know, get creative. I always really enjoy that, and it's been a pleasure
Well,
working
and we-
with you guys.
Yeah, and we love that you've taken the time to convey your needs and just being so cool with helping us out and, you know, directing us what we should be doing better and different so that way we can make better products. I mean, if we don't hear from, you know, users in the field, we don't know, you know, we do the best that, you know, that we know from our past experiences with customers, but that's the market's ever changing. And so we love it, you know, in multiple ways. I mean, one, we just like seeing that people are using our gear. That's awesome. Then seeing the creativity, you know, because we're just building blocks of metal and bearings and motors, you know. And so when it actually creates something that's beautiful and amazing, I mean, that's a huge payoff. You know, we oftentimes will bring, you know, employees out from floor to show like some of the great work. It's like, this is what you guys allowed, you know, part of what, you know, with some of the tools that you're building are how this shot, you know, was achieved. And they love seeing that. I mean, it really puts a lot of, you know, smiles on people's faces and gives us the energy and the passion to want to keep doing more of that and making it better every day.
I'm just curious what
Your
Chris
feedback
has
when it
one
comes
idea.
to my concerns in the past is very generous and very kind.
That's all right.
there were some rocky moments, but yeah,
Yeah.
it really has been a pleasure.
Yeah, no, we appreciate it. And yeah, I mean, well, look where we're at from then, and we've got a lot of things solved and a lot more in the works. And like I said, the next Chaos release has
Yeah.
got maybe about a third of your last list of requests for the software. So, you know, keep them coming. I mean, it's like, I mean,
We'll get there.
I dread the day we sit around wondering what.
Chris is like, I'm done. I got nothing
Yeah,
else.
we need Chris to tell us what we need.
I mean, as consumers, we want what we want. We have ideas, and you know, it's always a balance. You know, can we do this? Is this one quick and easy? And can we get 6 of these out, or do we focus on the one? You know, who does it help the most? And I mean, people should always just convey their thoughts and, you know, their desires and what they really like and work, because it helps products get better. It does.
And I think a lot of people, they might be a little bit intimidated to reach out and suggest things sometimes, and I definitely think that people should. I'd encourage people to definitely do that. So far,
Yeah.
you guys have been very receptive to everything, the issues that I've had, the complaints I had in the past, and how things have developed through. It's really has formed into a nice relationship, and I appreciate the fact that you guys do listen. Because, like I said, if you go out and you can buy a roll of toilet paper, but there's no feedback, there's no communication with that company. And a lot of people, I think, get kind of used to that kind of format when you're buying something. I'm not sure how some of these other large companies go, but I can't exactly just tell Ford that I need something and expect to get any kind of traction with it, and you never know unless you try, because like you were saying, Eric, if somebody mentions, hey, you know what would be a really kick-ass idea, X, Y, and Z, and you think, yeah, that'd be pretty cool, but there is a cost benefit to the, or you have to do a cost analysis to this, because it is something where it is time that's being put in there. Time is money. It's engineering time, it's coding time, it's developing time. Is this something that's really going to work out to be useful? Well, if a couple more people start asking, all of a sudden you start looking a little bit more. So yeah, people should always be encouraged to reach out if they have some crazy ideas, and just, shoot for the stars for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we'd love to still hear it, and obviously we can't do all of them. We're still a small company. We got great guys working here, and they're every day chipping away on code and on the mechanical side of things. We're always refining. We're always, making things better. But we love to still hear all of this, and because, we are listening, and it gets written down. If it's software, it goes into U-Track instantly. Whether we ever do it or not, it's still, it's logged. And then if we see enough things similar, then we try to, maybe come up with a tool within the software or the mechanical side or the firmware that will encompass all of these needs that are all somewhat similar, to where the amount of code that's required knocks all of these problems out. And then we revisit that at that time. But yeah, please ask. Constantly. We're always looking for suggestions.
Yeah.
We're not the ones using our gear all the time in the field. We do use our gear, but ours is typically for doing product shots and stuff here. We're not using it in the 20 different, 30, facets that you can use our gear. So like Chris, not many people are filming plants growing, but that particular need has a lot of specialized requirements to make that happen. And what we saw was beneficial or why we decided to tackle this, was because we knew that if we could make Chris happy, that would take care of all of our jewelry guys. That would take care of all of our, other smaller product type stuff. So it was like, if we can make Chris happy, nobody else is going to have they could not say anything that, because the level of work that he's doing supersedes everybody else, so we just shoot for the moon on that one. And, I think we got pretty close. And, all your jewelry guys and doing the smaller other, what we call traditional macro work, not the, microscopic macro work, should be more than satisfied with the motion quality of the macro version.
And I would echo what Chris is saying, and what Eric is asking for is, the first time that I reached out to Kessler and several other companies that I've mentioned before, where you get to talk to people who listen and care, they're really interested in what you're doing with it and why you're interested in something else, and they want to understand. And it kind of takes you back to realize that there are companies out there like Kessler that listen and want to help you as best they can, and maybe they already have a solution and it just, you didn't know about it. And it's nice to be able to reach out, pick up the phone, send an email, and say, hey, this is what I think. What do you think? It's worth it. Just if you have a thought or a concern or what have you, just say hello and find out.
And we love just seeing your work, even if it's not a suggestion. It seemed like back between 2008 and 2015, it was a completely different vibe in the industry. We'd have customers every day, multiple times a day, sending us their work. Like, I just shot this film. I just shot this time lapse, this stop motion. Check out what I did. And they were so excited. We don't get that much of that anymore. We get some, But we loved that here. I mean, it really does fuel us to see what people are doing. And a lot of times, even if they don't verbally ask for something, we could see something in your footage that just by knowing what they're trying to achieve, like, hey, this is stuff that people are doing. We can come up with this tool to make that easier for them. So a lot of times we'll come up with ideas on our side that might create a benefit without the customer even knowing that they wanted that yet, And so the more feedback, the better. And even if it's just showing us your work, we love seeing it. I mean, it's great.
Even from like my side, customer service, like I was telling you, Chris, just going from a phone call with somebody to hearing their ideas, to their project, to shipping their product out, and then getting a video 2 weeks later of what they've done, it's awesome.
It's rewarding.
It's one of the highlights of my job by far. And with the feedback thing, you'd be surprised how much feedback we get and ideas, and I can promise you all of them actually get told to Eric, and not all of them will make the drawing board, but it's every bit of feedback's crucial.
Yeah, I mean, share your work, just period, because everybody draws something from everything.
Oh, I love
You're helping people you don't realize that you're helping, even if you never hear about it. It's worth it to do it. Chris, thanks for sharing your work for my edit. The discipline you have is very impressive. I can agree with that. You have a lot of discipline. and Kessler, you guys are awesome.
Thank you.
And underwater slider / cine shooter.
Well, the slider's the easy part. Underwater cine
Underwater's
shooter.
not that hard
He said
either.
most
Just throw it in
feedback
the
makes
lake.
it to the drawing board.
He said it wouldn't be that hard either, just throw it in the lake.
Yeah, it may not work. Does that have to work?
I mean, there's a lot of products that just throw it in the lake.
I'll tell you what, going back on what we were just talking about, we actually did have a customer ask for, kind of like a heavy duty, rugged outdoor type of thing. And we just talked about that yesterday, where cine shooter itself is,
It's water resistant, but it's not submersible.
Yeah.
There's no watertight, electrical connections. Well, some, but not enough of them. But the boards are lacquered. I mean, so like condensation, high humidity, things like that, even light amount of water on the circuit board should not do any damage, but completely submerged would cause an issue.
scuba shooter.
Scuba shooter? Well, there you go. Maybe that'll be coming next year. Scuba shooter.
I don't know what that's the TV.
That's the
doing that.
TV remote. I don't know.
Let's see here. Are you still cooking your dirt to eliminate bugs and other little critters? That's a good question. Close guide.
Yeah, I've had a couple weird times where I've had to do strange things. Yeah, I've had to cook dirt just because I needed to get rid of any potential worms, any potential bugs, anything in there. So I'll just pressure cook dirt. I mean, I've also done other things in order to get rid of critters on plants. Just put them all in a big bin and throw some dry ice in there and some water, and it'll just fill it up with CO2, and you can drown the buggers. There's all kinds of really interesting different things to do. But the one thing that I don't like about cooking the dirt is I do that in my house in a pressure cooker, and then the whole house smells like dirt for about 3 hours. It's really actually pretty bad.
Gregory, you caught a live stream. Woo! I love doing stop motion. Yeah, stop motion is a lot of fun. Lewis, hello. Do you have any stills or anything of your workshop studio that you want to share or don't want to share?
Yeah. Let me see. Let me see.
down
First.
there, I
This
can-
is a newer laptop. Let me look and see what I got on my Dropbox. I mean,
Yeah,
one
what-
thing I can do. Well, here, if you want to do this, hang on 1 second. Let me pull this out.
I can. I think it was a voice thing.
Chris, while you're looking that up, I got a question for you. Have you ever worked with morel mushrooms?
No, I don't think you can actually cultivate them.
you can't. No, they've been trying
Yeah,
for
there's
years.
there are some mushrooms that are so difficult to grow that you have to find an area that has had 3 freezes in a year, a dead birch plant on it, and a fox took a dump on it, and that's the only like combination which will actually get it to grow.
Right.
Does it have to be a fox?
A brown fox, not a red fox.
Any
It has
small
to be
red
2 out of
dog
3.
And it has to
line.
be female between the ages of 2 and 4.
There you go, 2 out of 3, and possibly the third, but it just depends on the.
This might take me a second, to be honest.
Yeah.
Let's see, studio.
Of course, with all the moisture, I'm surprised you don't have issues with mold growing on lenses or camera and basement. That's interesting.
Oh, I do. Hold on, where's the I lost.
We call them filters, biofilters.
Here we go. Okay, with all the moisture issues, mold growing lenses on cameras or basement. Yeah, so I absolutely do run into problems with mold in my studio, and I'm throwing down fungicide quite often. It's just one of those things where there's not really a lot that can be done about it. I absolutely have probably the dirtiest studio that anybody has ever seen. There's always things hatching. There's things growing. Weird things happening. I'll have a shoot and then, it'll be running and I need to keep the shoot running, but it springs a small leak and I'll have like water in there that also has nutrients pumped into it that starts spilling. And the option is to stop the shoot and try to address it and fix it or keep the shoot going. And a lot of times I'll just keep it going. At some point I am going to have to rip out and replace some of the drywall in the studio. I do my best to keep it dry. I have a dehumidifier running in there nonstop. And because a lot of times I also have humidifiers running. It's kind of a weird cycle. It just kind of depends on the need of it. But yeah, in the lenses though, that's something I haven't really had a problem with, or the cameras. But yeah, mold in the corners around the baseboards and stuff like that. Unfortunately, that does happen. It's just kind of a nature of the beast, which is one of the reasons I wanted that studio so I could get it out of my basement. Because when I first started, I was just using a spare room in my basement, and boy, I just don't want to swamp that up. Nobody lives in the studio. Well, there's a lot of things that call the studio home, but I don't know.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask. I mean, aside from bugs, have you ever had any mammals or any other creatures just come in and decide
mice.
to eat?
Yeah, I had mice. I was shooting a cactus, a saguaro cactus. The interesting thing about it, like a saguaro cactus arm, is as long as it's vertical, it'll sit there and it'll be alive. The moment it lays down, it just starts wanting to die. And so I had one that was under another chute, and I had a couple cameras on it, and just to make a little desert scene, just to watch this thing die and just go down. And a couple mice moved into it in the middle of the chute and kind of ruined it. I think one of the most interesting things I found, though, for a while I had a whole bunch of carnivorous plants in my studio, and I had a little kind of like greenhouse in my studio that I'd set up to try to keep them nice and healthy. And when I ended up removing and taking all that stuff out after Green Planet was done, I found what looked like human ears growing out of the wall. I had like my studio is not that big, and I have one divider in it, so it's kind of 2 rooms. One long, kind of narrow room that's maybe about 8 or 9 feet by 20 feet, and the other one's maybe about 20 by 20. And that divider really is just drywall that's held up and hammered on. It's a very weak wall, but I use that to keep different temperature levels and stuff like that in a different set if I need to from the rest of the room. But in there where the carnivorous plants were, when I pulled all that stuff out, it looked like there were 4 or 5 human ears like growing out of the wall. And it was a certain kind of mold or a certain kind of mushroom or something that I hadn't seen before. But yeah, once in a while I'll find something really surprising in there. Luckily, I haven't had anybody seriously ask me about filming anything that was dead. That's something I really don't have a lot of interest for and would probably charge a very premium. I was talking to a
You have to build a separate studio.
What's that?
You have to build a separate studio just for that, away from everything else.
Oh, yeah. I remember talking to a producer who's working on a production out in California about a farm, and we were on a call, and he was kind of joking around. He's like, well, one of the things we were thinking about is we have a recently deceased bovine. Could we send that to you and have you film it?
A whole cow?
No. I mean, everybody has a price, but oh my gosh, my neighbors would hate me. You know? I remember talking to Tim and Todd though, and they those Tim Shepard, the guy that has done most of the work that you'd see for BBC productions on when it has to do with plant time lapse. And I remember he has this studio in a place. I think like the address is like Ye Old Sawmill in Exeter. It's like it doesn't have a number, it has like a name. And if you saw it, you'd think it was a garden shed, but you open it up and you go in there. It's like, you know, the front door is like all wood and it's got this big latch that comes down like one of those old school latches you'd see on like a castle, you know, and you go in there and there's all this camera equipment, but from outside it looks like it's just going to be a bunch of like a junk in there. But that place was not very well sealed, and apparently there's been a couple times where something would go in there and go die, and they can't find it. It's just somewhere and they're stinking up. You still got to go to work and deal with it. Ugh.
Were you able to find any pictures of your studio there? Or?
No, I got distracted. You guys kept distracting me.
Well, I mean, that tends to happen in this industry a lot.
Let's see. I mean, I've got some photos on my website. If you want to, I can like probably show those. I just didn't have anything. I'm sorry, everybody. I didn't really have anything prepared.
No. I mean, yeah, you not having photos. Yeah, that was the whole problem with this whole live stream. There wasn't any audio issues for like 30 minutes.
Yeah, if it wasn't for that, it would have been perfection from the beginning to the end. Let me see. I'm going to see if I can find some photos of my robots, though.
It was a wireless mic, and I think it's actually a cable. This cable right here, 1/8 inch from wireless. That's what was causing the whole thing, and I cannot explain why it was doing that. Even if everything was turned off, that made no sense. Wild. All right, who's got questions? Throw them out there. Let's. Or who's got comments? Who's got? I always wondered because I know I've got a lot of my answers from Chris already. It's like, dude, how did you do that? Chris is one of those people. You know, you kind of think some people are going to be like, no, I'm going to tell you that. Chris is like, oh yeah, this is how you do it.
Here we go. Oh yeah, I'm a total open book. I'm terrible about that. I give out my secrets. I figure that if anybody really wants to, the only reason I've gotten as far as I am is I'm just too dumb to know when to stop.
I mean, it's only taken you many, many years to get to this point. So if you give out the secrets, it's still going to take them many, many years. You didn't.
If this was my career,
exactly how it grew.
If this is my career right here, from this point down, that's all failure.
There's a lot of failure propping me up in this industry.
Oops, not that slide. Screen share, stop screen share. I guess I already had one going. Let me do a new one.
Yeah, you have one. It's fine.
Share screen. Window. Okay. I could show you a couple different things that I'd worked on here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's see, is that showing up? Okay, so this thing, believe it or not, is a robot. It's a complete mess, but the entire thing actually is built to hang upside down. So right now, this is actually upside down. And what this was used is, this was a robot that was using Green Planet to do really fine movement of the camera, almost like a little mini gantry rig. It would sit from above, and you could drop it down and have it like mounted to like a really heavy duty frame. And yeah, so that's one of the things I did. Here's one that I'd done recently. This is a system that was out there for a Bear commercial. This was about time lapse. And what you see here is a solar powered time lapse rail. So these rows here of corn are what they were filming. And what they wanted to prove was there would not be one single weed in this entire field, that it would just basically be impossible for a weed to show up. So this is one that I actually did with Dustin Farrell, and that was a really fun project. The ask was 2 8-foot long time-lapse sliders that were solar powered that could run on a schedule. So they would only film for a certain part of the day. And that project worked, so I'm looking forward to seeing the results from it. Then I've got, what else do we got? Okay, so this is one of my tower robots. And right now, at this point, I think I was just kind of playing around. But the idea is you have this camera here that's on a pan and tilt, and it's on this long arm that sticks out from a crossbar. And this arm can slide back and forth on the crossbar, and then it can go all the way up and down. And are you able to see my mouse cursor on the, okay, cool, yeah.
Yeah.
So I originally developed this one to film crops like corn, because the idea is what you want to keep the camera very low to the ground when it starts and be able to bring it up for the entire height of the stock. So this one's about, it can take the camera from the ground to about 6.5 feet up in the air, worth of range. And it's only got about a meter of left and right. And then this entire track, if you see down here, this whole thing will slide forward and backwards too. And it's absolutely amazing how well it works, because this thing is probably about 250 pounds of steel. And I can slide it forward and backwards and have it exactly where it needs to be every time. Let's see, what else do we got? Same robot, just from the back view, so you can kind of see the height of it. My head is about here. Then another shot of that same robot. Let's get something else. Okay, this is a set that I was filming Venus flytraps. And I was filming that, and I'm pretty sure that was for Green Planet. So get a little bit of a flora here, a little bit of a backdrop on the wall, just something so you don't see the blue. But for the most part, I was focused in on this really small spot. It's interesting, a lot of these sets will get really big sometimes, maybe about like 10 feet by 10 feet or larger. And the funny thing is there's usually only a couple square feet of area in which you're actually filming. The rest of it's just to fill in. That's that same robot. Let's see, you can see this is my studio in the background. It's usually a lot of weird colors and stuff going on. This is one of those macro rigs that I was talking about. And you can see down here, you have a couple lead screw type bearings. And then there's a turntable on here. And this is actually a utricularia, this plant right here. This is the one that it sends these long tendrils out. And if you look here, you can see the tendril coming right down and into the plant. And it's on its way down there to go grow itself in the little water pocket in the bottom. So this is one of the shoots that I did with one of those macro rigs. And the entire idea is you can move the camera up and down, but you have a small set and you rotate the set. And that way you don't have to really move the camera around the set. So you can get a lot of freedom on really small subjects in a very small area. There's another view of it shooting those. And these were actually seen on the BBC's The Water episode with the utricularia. And then here, this is Dan. This is my larger of my two gantries. And you can see that they got the camera down here with that probe lens everybody loves so much. This is stuff that I was shooting for Green Planet. These are Nepenthes. It's a type of carnivorous plant. And with this, I was doing something kind of experimental because I was getting so much move on the background footage, on the background material. This was before I started using fog in order to humidify and keep the sets nice and moist. So what I had done was I filmed these things actually growing in front of the blue. And then when I was done, I replayed the move that I caught and shot it again after I wet down the set. And then I removed the plants and I removed the blue. So I did a pass of just the plants, and then I did a pass of the background, and I overlaid them together. And it worked really well. It was a nice way to do blue screen where you didn't have to sit there and really stress about the movement and how to get things to match up. But you can see, let me go, using a trackpad. I'm not that good at it. This is the gantry rig from below, and this entire part will slide all the way forward and backwards and left and right. I get probably about 7 or 8 feet worth of track on the X and Y, and then here's the Z, the gantry or the Z axis. There's a little stabilizer down there, and it just uses a lead screw on the top, and it just pulls this carriage up and down. And it's not very robust, but it actually works really well. This was an old pan tilt that I had where I had been printing these things out of plastic. since then, I've definitely, I've moved away from that. Let's see. Next. It's just another shot of that one filming the Nepenthes. Kind of another angle. You can see everything that's going on there. Here's the whole pan system assembly. And this is auto. This is the first robot that I built, and this was originally built down in my basement, and I had to relocate it up here. I used to have some of those captive bearings on the top, but I like the way that these wheels on the top worked, so I kind of changed it to match with that, and really appreciate how well that worked. I used to use a lead screw on the top for the X and the Y, but moving over to a belt with a heavily geared motor actually did better. Less vibrations. This entire telescoping arrangement is made out of heavy duty drawer sliders. And then this is a Servo City PT 2100, I think, pan tilt roll. And you think you might actually be able to see there's a little motor here that is on a little rail facing back. So at this point, I've got this entire thing kind of cockeyed at a 45, so I can use the left eye, right eye motor on the roll. I can use the roll as a tilt, and then the tilt now becomes the roll. And I can use the camera forward and backwards and kind of capture macro work. And on there, I was just filming seeds of some sort. But this is one of the kind of the back area in my studio.
I'm not going to mention any names, but keep an eye on your camera on that last head.
On the what?
That last pan and tilt that you had. Just keep your eye on that one. It may have a history in my studio.
Oh.
Is that the one that fell?
That's the one that fell.
Oh, really?
Yes. The pan bearing it's just friction fit in there.
Really?
And when you're going inverted, you can actually just yank it right out.
I had no idea. I should probably go check that.
It's clearly not happening to you because you said that's your oldest rig. So just
This is one that this is one that I built for BBC. You see, you got a pan tilt unit on the head, and then you got this arm, and then that entire thing can rise up and down. The whole thing can slide forward and backwards, and you got pan tilt focus and all that. And this is, in this case, you can see down here, these are leaf cutter ants down here that is chasing after. So I built 3 of these for the BBC. This is being shot in Costa Rica. This gentleman here, Ollie, is a camera operator, and he is absolutely fantastic. I'm a huge fan of his work.
leaf
That's
cutters
outside.
are a pain in the rear to shoot. They follow their trail and then they're done and they moved along.
Yeah, we got bit by those in Costa Rica. I was out there about a year ago. Wife and I went out and we had our marriage ceremony on Hako Beach. And we were out walking around and saw leaf cutter ants. And I was just blew my mind. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Leaf cutter ants. I've always wanted to see these. They're everywhere out there. I got bit like 3 or 4 times by them.
Come visit. I've got them all over my property.
Really?
Yes. They're insane. I mean, I have a dogwood tree. It's their absolute favorite. Every year, it puts on the most beautiful leaves. They are gone within a week. Every year. I don't know how that tree survives, but they're just. It's insane.
I didn't know they were up in North America. I thought they were just central and south.
Oh no, I have 2 or 3 colonies, and by colonies we're talking about an area about 20 foot in diameter. Each colony is. And they build a huge mound, and then when they leave, it just caves in. It's a disaster. I mean, they typically don't bother us, but I mean, we don't have any fruit trees because we don't have any leaves on the fruit trees. Christian's asking, how many axes of movement are you up to now? Currently, Christian, I'm mapping 20. I've got a little fun little project to do with that. It's going to be fun. You'll see.
That sounds like that'd be a nightmare to kind of work through.
It's
I look forward to seeing
been
what you're doing
fun
with
so
that.
far. It's definitely, learning Dragon Frame and learning it to its extremes is what it's been taking to do that. It's cool though, and I do love that Kessler now can support it because I've got options for various things.
You're just running a bunch of second shooter controllers.
Yep,
As your motor drivers.
Yep. City shooter and second shooters all connected. You just keep going, adding more units.
Yeah.
Pretty slick. I just got some more questions. This is good stuff. I mean, the work you got there, Chris, is just amazing. It really is.
Oh, thank you.
It's all quiet. What you guys got? You got questions?
No. Just trying to think what I can talk about.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things I could talk
You
about,
could.
but I don't want to.
give it away. Is there?
Yeah, not
think
at
we
this
should
point.
talk about it.
Yeah.
I mean, you could grab one of the soft wheels and show it.
I could go grab one.
Or,
I don't know if it's much. I mean, I can. Sure. Yeah.
Don't forget
I'll be
your
right
wireless.
back. Yeah, I'll put that back on.
Rip that right off those. Yeah.
I'll take care of that while I'm going too. I'll be back in about a few minutes.
Let's see. Here's a question. How did you get started in the engineering and programming your own equipment? That's Chris. That's all you.
From being broke ass in the middle of a divorce, I had no money. This was something I knew I clearly wanted to pursue. There was no doubt about it. I mean, I saw it and I was just like, this is something that I want to do. This is something I want to learn. But the problem was I just really didn't have a lot of money, So, like I said, I could afford to buy an Adreno. I could afford to buy cheap stepper motors and little drivers, and that was really what kind of got me into it. I mean, the entire thing. I remember with Adreno, the first thing you do is you learn how to make an LED blink. Everybody starts at the same spot, and then as you just start to learn more and more, it just starts to build. At this point, I can write code for something like Adreno fairly quickly. I've got some pretty complex codes that I've written. They're nothing compared to like what people do with Python and C++ and stuff like that. But I know enough to like animate my things that I'm trying to build. I know enough to make my own studio timers and systems in order to coordinate everything that has to be coordinated together in order to work properly. Yeah, it was just that's kind of how I got started. It was just, I'm gonna be honest, at the time, if I could have just afforded to buy something, probably would have a completely different outlook or result in where my life went. It was actually sitting there and learning how to do that on my own, just because those are the only bits I could afford in order to pull it off. That really kind of worked. In fact, I remember my first camera I got was a Nikon D40. And I remember just being enamored by it because, I mean, you press the button, you hear the shutter. I think first digital camera I had was just a little point and shoot. And I never really did much with film, which also is kind of interesting. So I didn't really do too well in high school, to be honest. I think I had about a 1.6 GPA by the time it was done. And my principal wasn't a big fan of me and just kind of pushed me through. So I was pretty thankful for that. But one of the reasons my grade point average was so low is I got kicked out of 2 classes in my senior year because I skipped both of them the first day. And then the second day thought, I think I'm just going to skip it again. And the third day, I thought it'd be weird if I showed up. So I just kind of dropped those classes. And those 2 classes were, one of them was photography, and the other one was principles of a mechanical design. And then I ended up joining the military and went off to the Air Force. And then I came back, and then I did 20 years in telecom and realized that I probably should have paid more attention to those 2 classes because that was something I really enjoyed doing.
Well, but I mean, you could now go back to your principal in high school and junior high and say, you remember when you told me if I didn't study, I was just going to be shoveling dirt? Well, I'm shoveling dirt and I'm loving it. It's great. I'm growing mushrooms. If they could see me now.
You didn't know. Oh, that's great.
I definitely share that. I was not a favorite of school, and they were not a favorite of me either. And I find so many people that are like that do amazing and creative things, and it's, sometimes it's, you got to embrace people for who they are, and what they can
Yeah,
bring.
absolutely. I mean, people have different kind of learning styles and techniques. For me, a lot of it has to do with if I'm interested in it, I can really dig into it and I can really submerge myself in it. But if it's just something I'm not particularly interested in, I mean, I know there's a lot of people that are really big fans of 13th century Russian lit, but I don't think I could really get very far in a class on something like that. It's just I'm more interested in, or I seem to be better at learning things that I can actually sink my hands into, the things that I can interact with. Really seems to help more than just like like conceptual stuff. I mean, coding is very conceptual, but if you're doing it on the Adreno platform, you're making, well, might be, you don't have to, but in my case, I'm always making something move, or I'm triggering something, or I'm turning something on or off, or spinning something. You know.
It's yeah, I feel that a lot. Have you found certain rails or methods of movement to be too bumpy and not worth using, or are the macro movements so small that they're forgiving? Ooh,
Yeah, I'd say the
I guess
opposite.
it's
I would say macro movements are far less forgiving. When it comes to like making macro rails, I've tried to make a good macro rail quite a few times, and they never work out very well. Like I have one right now. It's a company called We Macro, and they make a macro rail. It's very inexpensive and it is absolutely stable. It's dead on. But every single time I've tried to make my own rail, and I mean from scratch. If you can generally go on eBay and probably find like a little motorized rail that's stepper powered, and for a relatively decent price, it's probably going to be pretty solid. But I've tried to make low profile versions myself. I wanted to throw one under every camera in my studio, and it was definitely a bag of mixed results. And it got to the point where I just felt like it just wasn't worth expending the time and energy if I could buy something off the market that did just as well. That tiny little rail that's on the bottom, or right under the camera on auto, that gantry robot, I think I paid like $60 for it, and the thing is just rock steady. And then I would build one, and I'd machine out parts out of aluminum. I would 3D print parts. I would uh, do everything that I could to keep these things as accurate as possible. And in the end of the day, when the camera is facing down that rail and that lead screw is moving, it would start moving a little bit. I've done pretty well with Igus. That's a brand that makes a lot of rails. They've got like their Dryline series that I've always been a really big fan of. When we were originally putting out those Kronos rails, that it was a lead screw design, and that setup actually worked pretty well. But still, trying to get it down to the size for macro is awfully difficult. So there's a lot of options
interesting.
for aluminum, steel, options and the slides hitting the rails, rollers, bearings, ball. It can be overwhelming. It can absolutely be overwhelming trying to find the right part. One of the things that I've been working on, I've been doing a lot of really long-term time lapse with long-term capture rigs. This all started on working on Green Planet. We had some systems from Harbortronics which got picked up by Photo Sentinel. I think they're the same company now, but they're based out of Fort Collins, which is just a few hours north of me. So I drove up there, met the team, met them all. Picked up some equipment. It was really cool being able to see their shop and how they do things, and they really were fantastic bits of equipment. But they were not inexpensive. They had a lot of features that the BBC was not terribly interested in, like being able to remote monitor things. They would rather try to spend less money and get stuff that maybe if it gets destroyed, it's not a big deal. Um, and they didn't really want to pay for the cellular service in order to get like the constant downloads from the cameras. So they asked me like, "Hey, can you build a long-term capture system?" And I said, "Okay, yeah, sure. Let me see what I can do." So I built the first version of what I called the Watchman, they were really insistent that I name it, because I name most of my robots, mostly just because I associate that name with the performance. It kind of gives them a little personality. I'll know that I don't want to do this with Dan, but I can take this to Otto just fine, or Gomez is better than one thing than Baby is. So I kind of like to do that. So I call him the Watchman. Anyway, I started cranking these things out. I built a little controller, and it was really kind of an interesting experience because I was able to. They paid me to build a whole bunch of these, and they put them all over the world and tested them. And sometimes there were some failures, sometimes there were some successes. A lot of interesting things that can happen. There's a one that got destroyed by a pack of baboons, or a troop of baboons near Cape Town, South Africa. And there's one that got full of hornets, and there was another one where the glass element fell off of the front of it, and the thing, it was half full of water and still taking pictures. It was pretty interesting. But over the years, I've been developing and working on these things and kind of tuning them in order to turn it into something that can be an actual product. And if you follow me on my social, you'll like Instagram, you'll probably see instances of that. But it's just something as far as like picking out a certain type of connector. It can be an absolute chore, and it can be something that you're sitting there for like hours and hours looking through very different types of connectors on like AliExpress or Alibaba or Amazon or eBay, and trying to find something that where you feel this is going to be a steady source that you can get that also hits the quality you want for the price that you want. And like just recently, my solar panel connection into the box is a brand new one, and I finally found like I found it. Like that was the connector I wanted, and I went through probably about 7 style of connectors before I got there. So when it comes to the rollers, the bearings, the belts, the lead screws, yeah, absolutely. If you're not careful, it's something that you can kind of obsess over. At the end of the day, you do need to pick something. But I have had very many times where I'm just sitting on my phone, scrolling, looking for stuff for hours, reaching out to vendors, seeing if any of them make them, how much they cost if I buy X amount and stuff like that. It can definitely be a chore. I'm sure. I don't know, but what about you guys? What about Eric and Jason? What about you guys when it comes to that? When it comes to like making these determinations on hardware, do you guys just have stuff that you're kind of become your go-to that you use, or do you still sit there and think like, God, which one of these connectors really defines me as an individual?
I'm still trying to find my individuality, but yeah, I mean, at this stage, 20 years of doing this, it's easier because you've been exposed to so many different materials and connectors, and so now just through exposure for so long, when we go in to do a particular product, we kind of have a really good idea, like, oh, this, whether it's Hiroshi or Limo or, JST or whatever the connector style is, depending on the job and the requirements of it, we have, I would say, 80% of the time know exactly what we want now. And, going back 10, 20 years ago, that wasn't the case. But, and there's still new challenges now. So there are times, like these wheels, for example, we've been trying to figure this magic material out since we started the product. And the thing is, it didn't really exist. And even now, not one material exists to make this work the way that we wanted it to work. And actually where this idea started from was we worked with a company that came to us that wanted us to manufacture a slider type product for them. And they brought to us a lot of requirements for the wheels, and what we settled on for them, we never went into production. They ended up, I don't know, that was so long ago, I don't remember what happened, but what we did achieve was a wheel style that they loved, and what that was actually just an off-the-shelf stainless bearing, but stainless on a hard rail. It might roll freely, but it makes a lot of noise, and you feel, even if there's like a speck of dust on the rail. And that's what they brought to us, what they were doing. They're like, this needs to be smoothed out, and we have an overmolding machine here as well. I think we ended up subbing that out, and it was basically they overmolded a harder durometer rubber over the actual bearing race itself, and that worked beautifully. So you had the structure of the steel bearing, which made it very rigid, but the softer, thin durometer overmolded rubber allowed it to be very forgiving and quiet. And so that came back up to mind when we were dealing with these, with traditional urethane wheels. Again, if to get to a point where the wheels would not dent, the urethane was a little on the hard side. I don't remember what our past durometer was, but they worked beautifully on our precision ground rail because there was no imperfections, and they were still soft enough to not make any noise or feel any kind of minor grit or dirt or things like that. But we did hear, customers say, hey, it works great with your rail, but when I'm using just steel pipe off of a grip truck or, just whatever else they were using, they're like, it's not very forgiving. And so, then we experimented with softer durometer wheels like a lot of the other dolly trucks are using, and they do ride smoothly over rough rail or rail that's not very, smooth. But the problem is you leave them sit like you expressed, Chris, where they dent. And so if you don't rotate the wheels or do the offsets and all that stuff, it becomes a problem. So we kind of approached these new wheels in that same way. For one, it sparked because our manufacturer said they got a new composite urethane material and they wanted us to try it. And it did not work well as it is, but it works great as a surface material. So we have a casting method that basically kind of works in the same way, where it's a harder durometer interior and then goes to a slightly softer material in the mid cast, and then on the surface is this new material. And I don't know if you can see, but I don't think it'll pick up on the camera, but this thinner outer set wheel, if I push and bend it in, it bounces right back. It actually has memory, and that's kind of like your memory foam. But it's only on the thin surface, so if we made the entire wheel out of that material, it'd be too soft. It'd be too much resistance. We weren't really happy with it, but it's great as an outer material. So it's, how we got here. And it took, I don't know, like I said, 5 or more years of us just trying different things and, waiting for different opportunities with new materials. And finally we're here. We're casting these in this like charcoal color gray just to make them visually look different. And we thought they looked kind of, nice versus everything just being black. And yeah, we've lightened up the trucks too on the last run just to make things look a little bit nicer and also take some weight out. And again, solid stainless steel hub and full pressed stainless bearings. So there's no play in these at all. So very secure system.
They're oddly satisfying when you touch them. You expect them to be hard, and they're really soft, but they don't.
They roll just as smooth as our current black wheels, but they're so much more forgiving. And yeah, they do feel nice. It's almost like velvet.
It's literally, it feels like velvet, but it's not.
Yeah.
You can sit there and play with it.
You can't scrape it out. It's an amazing material. It really is. We didn't make the material. We just came up with the process on how to apply the material in a useful way.
Let's see. As a VFX specialist, I'm interested in the ability to replicate camera movement and I/O for FBX for 3D and VFX software. Is that possible with Kessler?
I don't know if I understand. So, ability to replicate camera movement.
Let's see, I know it's a huge tangent at the moment, but better save for later. Replicate camera movement
Are you talking about? You can use like HTC's tracking devices if that's. I'm not sure.
Are you talking about virtual production, or are you talking about scale mapping out, or just replication and knowing exactly where it's moving, et cetera? Oops, Chris, where'd you go?
Can you jump back in?
He's like,
I'm out.
VFX. There he is. Wow, Chris, you start talking about VFX, you're like, I'm done. I'm done.
No, sorry about that. That was definitely caused by me.
Gregory, if you have more...
if you can elaborate a little bit more on the question.
so we can get you an answer here. Let's see here. Tim says, I think he means saving or exporting the camera keyframes as an FBX. I guess that's a file
Type.
yeah, so you can import it to 3D apps for VFX post work.
I mean, right now we export just generic, like raw encoder data, which a lot of people have been able to use that to create the, the trajectory within a virtual software or in a VFX software. That isn't really my forte. My software guy is really, really good. I might have to dig in on that, or if just raw encoder data would give you enough information of trajectory, place, and time, in a three-dimensional space, then yeah, we do that right now. But as far as a particular file type, we might be able to do some conversions to that, but we'd have to take a look at it.
I'm sure if there's enough of a need out there, I mean.
Yeah, it just hasn't been brought to us yet. So now that it has, we can, if you want to send me an email, it's eric@kesslercrane.com. And on Monday, I can start digging in to see what it would take to put that file type out with our trajectory data.
Hey, he's got some more questions. Let's load them up here. Let's rapid fire. Why is there a picture? That's weird.
Huh? Oh, that's right. There's two Scotts.
That's too many. If there were more me, there'd be less me. Let's see. Talking about moving by hand and having the motion control repeat it. Okay.
You can kind of already do that with the with the Cine shooter, depending on what kind of resolution.
That's free motion.
You can aim it for keyframes by hand.
Yeah, you can position it and then record those. Yeah, I think maybe what he's asking is to actually move it in three-dimensional space and then play that move, or go handheld and then duplicate it. That's going to be difficult just because you're, a pan, tilt, and slide is, somewhat confined, right? As to where your arms can move in and out. You need a lot more access to get that path exactly, if that's what you're asking. It could be done with something like a bolt, or that has, complete freedom of motion. So I would say right now, no. Maybe there'll be things here in the near future that might allow that, but we'd have to do an HTC tracking device just to track what you're doing, kind of like what you would do for Unreal, and then we'd have to import that to a device that has that same amount of freedom of movement. Then you would be able to do that.
It looks like FBX is considered the universally accepted format.
Okay.
So that's probably like comma delimited format.
Right, something. Sure. Yeah, I'll check into that and see.
Let's see here. Eric, thanks for making these slider motors with multiple ratios.
Oh, yeah.
I got them finally set up and going and excited to try them out over this weekend.
Awesome.
I'm not sure if the multiple gear ratios is a normal option on your website anymore. It should be. It opened up a lot of freedom for me.
Yeah, so Jared had reached out. He has kind of a custom built slider rig, and our standard Dana Dollar motor kit would fit on that, or he made the mounting to be compatible with the Dana Dolly mounting holes. But for his application, the stock, or what we consider our standard Dana Dolly motor, was, I think, too fast and not high enough torque. So I told him we can, we have, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 different motors that we stock here in house. So I just built him 2 that were higher gear ratio, or lower gear ratios rather. And I think one of them he had tested and said that it was working better, or was close to what he was needing. But yeah, anybody that needs anything custom, I mean, we do have a lot of just raw components here that can be mismatched in different ways. I mean, that's kind of like what the macro is. That wasn't like new technology that we developed. That was stuff that we had from CineDrive that we, put into the Cine shooter and for that application. So if you have a special need or want, feel free to ask. And even if it does require some machining, if it's minor, that's always something I personally can just go out on one of our manual mills and knock out pretty quickly. If it's developing a whole new product, that obviously takes time. But if you just need, small mounts or modifications to a current product or just different gear ratios, things like that, or pulley sizes, those are all things that can be done fairly easily and quickly.
Greg said he'll shoot you an email. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of different motor options that they can do, and I mean, there's definitely a need for each of them. And if someone is thinking about buying a system, you don't just have to choose this is what comes standard. They just chose what was most universally
Popular.
popular. They have 4 times faster, and then they have 10 times slower, and various steps in between. It's kind of fun walking around back there. I've been walking around here for days just going, ooh.
Lots of bits and pieces.
Lots of fun bits and pieces. All right, who's got some more questions?
Actually,
So-
I got to chime in real quick. I've actually got something
Yeah.
come up, and I'm probably going to have to go ahead and bail. But I want to thank you for the
Okay.
opportunity to be
Yeah,
on
and-
here. This has been a lot of fun.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
we can
Eric,
wrap this
Jason,
up.
great to see you. Jason,
Hey.
it's really nice to get a
Yeah.
face to the name.
For real, yeah.
And,
You've done amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Really appreciate your time today.
Really do, Chris.
Yeah,
And
well,
thank you
thank
for
you.
working with us on the macro project. I mean, it's been a good success. We've sold quite a few of them. It was what a lot of people needed. So really appreciate your feedback and all the time that you put in testing and even with the Dragon frame stuff. Really, I mean,
Sure.
and Scott as well. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I look forward to
Chris,
seeing what's coming
before
up
you
next,
bail,
guys.
where can they find you? Where can they?
Oh, yeah.
Where do people-
So I'm on Instagram as Biolapse. I've also got a Biolapse Facebook page. You can also reach out to me at Chris Field on Facebook. I've got a website, Instagram, pretty much all the social media stuff, as if I don't do Twitter, just not something I ever got into. But you can also reach me at chris@biolapse.com. And I'm always happy to talk about this stuff with anybody. And, if you're working on something and you're running into an issue, you want to bounce it off some people, definitely check out the DIY motion control page on Facebook. I'm the admin on it, and we've got some really good talent, some really, really skilled people in there that know a lot more than I do that can definitely help out as well. So be sure to check it out.
Well, we definitely appreciate you dropping in here and sharing your knowledge and your creativity and your finished projects. It's amazing, it truly is.
Absolutely.
And
Thank you.
we'll just wrap it up here too.
All right.
So
Have a great weekend, Chris.
All right. Yep.
Everyone,
You too. See
thank
you guys
you.
later.
Hey, guys.
and
All right.
don't let your passions center around your life. Let your life center around your passions. Bye, everyone.